From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening and or good morning, wherever you may be across this great land of ours. From the Tahitian and Hawaiian Islands in the west, nestled in the warm trade winds of the Pacific, eastward to the Caribbean and the U.S. Virgin Islands, with their own soft winds, south into South America, north all the way to the pole, and worldwide on the Internet. And, by the way, hello to my friends down at the Antarctic, at McMurdo. This is Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell, and it's great to be here tonight. We are going to talk tonight about one of my favorite topics in the world, maybe my favorite, actually, time travel. In the first hour, I'm going to talk to time travelers, you. Those of you out there who claim to be time travelers. Now, in the second hour, we're going to have actually a very serious guest on time travel. David Anderson, Dr. David Anderson, Ph.D., is a former United States Air Force officer, flight test engineer, and scientist who developed a passion for space-time study while conducting research at the prestigious Air Force Flight Test Center. Now, listen to this. For the last 20 years, he has been formulating and developing his breakthrough concepts in space-time physics and the study of time. His work led to the development of what today is called the time-warped field theory. His research holds the first promise for the development and application of practical time control technology. In 1995, Dr. Anderson founded the Time Travel Research Center, today the world's most advanced research laboratory dedicated exclusively to the study and development of time control technology and its application. His company also sponsors an organization called the Time Travel Research Association, which networks time travel information and interests from more than 80 countries around the world. Now, as you know, many of our nation's top theoretical physicists insist that with a proper amount of energy, time travel is definitely going to be possible. Therefore, if time travel is going to be possible, if that is an accurate scenario, then one might reasonably ask, well, then where are the time travelers? They ought to be here, right? They ought to be here. And I suspect they are here. Now, I'm not saying that when I begin picking up lines here in a few minutes, requesting to talk to any of you who claim to be time travelers, I'm not saying that these people are real, and I'm not saying they're not. That's for you to judge. All I'm saying is that it is reasonable to assume that if time travel will eventually be a reality, then there should be time travelers here now. There really should. So that's what lies ahead. Let's see what's in the news. Elian's father in the morning will come to the U.S. and will hope to take his son away. And you know what? I have no comments on this whole thing. It's going to be big in the news and probably real trouble for Miami. I hope they are braced for it, and I'm sure they are. Otherwise, I see nothing in the news that even merits particular comment from me. A partial birth abortion ban news. Let's see, GOP courting Hispanics with a new ad. Jewish settlers occupy Hilltop, West Bank. Microsoft going through its agony. Biotech food safety urged. North Carolina school ends same-sex class, really? Guess they thought that wasn't for 8th graders. So they're going to let them get back together again with the girls. Because there was this big thing going around saying that American education discriminated against girls in the classroom. that the teachers somehow regarded them as less important than the guys. So that's basically what the news is, not much. But time travel, that's different. Now, I do have to tell you what I do have. I have an awful lot of environmental news that's scary as hell. A global warming sea change, you know about that? The sea change temperature. A gigantic hole opening up in the ozone layer over the Arctic, which scientists believe will severely damage the natural shield protecting the northern hemisphere. That, guess what? That's us. From cancer-causing sunlight. So down in Australia, you know, the children are required to wear headgear to school, and soon that may be the reality here, too. In Cairo, French archaeologists have discovered the remains of a 4,000-year-old Queen's Pyramid south of Cairo, complete with texts of special prayers previously found only with kings. And here's an article on church urged to recognize reality of hell. It's a really interesting article, too. But this hour, what I want to do is talk to people, you out there, who claim to be travelers in time. Believe me, it's interesting. Strange, but interesting. So if you're a time traveler, call me. That's all we're going to take calls from this hour. People who claim to have arrived here, be here now, through time, through whatever method. Coming right up. All right, we are accepting calls this hour from time travelers only. If you have traveled in time, or you are presently a traveler to this time, then we want to hear from you. Otherwise, the phone lines are closed, but for that group, they are certainly open. With that in mind, top of the morning to you on the wild card line. You are on the air. Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Hello?
Yes. We're here.
Yes, my name is Robert, and I am not quite a time traveler. I'm from a little bit different dimension than yours.
Well, that's... Okay. Listen, I think that may be virtually the same thing. You claim to be from another dimension.
Yes, Senator.
I'm not a senator.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
A little slip there. You haven't testified in front of a group lately, have you?
No, not at all.
I don't know. There's no other way somebody would say yes, Senator.
Well, actually, my original dimension I'm from, you are a senator of Arizona.
Well, I'll be damned. Of Arizona?
Yes, basically...
Senator Art Bell. Arizona Senator Art Bell. Boy, that has a ring to it.
Yes, it does. Definitely does. Basically, what happened in my dimension, the South won the Civil War.
The South won the Civil War?
Yes, at the First Battle of Bull Run, basically that's where the Civil War ended. And I am from, in an awful dimension, the Confederate States of America.
Wow! Now, if the South won the Civil War, all states would be Confederate, wouldn't they?
Well, no, actually, the original Mason-Dixon line holds. There is the United States of America, which runs
at the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, roughly? That's where it is
Pennsylvania-Maryland border, and also up into Canada. In the Confederate States.
Really?
Yes. Shortly after that, basically, Lincoln resigned. I loved watching your Civil War. A couple of years ago, you had the PBS special, and it was a big hit in our dimension because it was something that, we never thought that had been possible. But,
so that special appeared in your dimension as well?
Well, it didn't appear in my dimension. We just basically brought it back. We've been able to...
What about history between the ending of the Civil War, which you say was different, and now? Yes. It must be indeed in your dimension entirely different.
It's entirely different. Basically what happened is the United States went ahead and invaded Canada. The Confederate States of America have basically went all the way to your Panama, which is basically Mexico all the way to Central America, or just Confederate States to us. They're just another flag on our stars and bars.
So really, in that dimension, we physically possess How much of Canada?
It's all of Canada.
All right. I've really wanted Canada for a long time, and so.
Marty, if you ever come over, if I ever meet you, I'll have to take you to where I live. And
can you do that? Is that possible?
Yes, that is possible. Basically,
what about this terrible conundrum of not being able to meet yourself, though? I mean, what if I came with you and met Senator Bell? Wouldn't I possibly blink out?
No. You're just a different person from him. You're not sort of difficult to explain. I don't know. My job basically is pretty much to go out. I'm retired.
I can hear the Southern accent in you, no question about it.
Yes, but no, I'm basically retired. My job was to go out to different dimensions and sort of scout them out and see basically how they different.
You sound a little young to be retired. Of course, who am I to talk?
I've had rejuvenation, so.
Rejuvenation.
Yes.
Another advantage in. By the way, how should we consider this dimension as? Is there a way to phrase where you say you are from? Is it a fourth dimension, a fifth dimension?
Basically, we've explored right now about 50 different offshoots of the planet Earth.
Holy smokes! You mean different dimensional renderings of Earth?
Basically, from our dimension, how time is split differently. There's a lot of of course, there's a couple of splits where the United States lost the Cold War. We, of course, there's several where we lost the Civil War. There's one where basically Nazi Germany won. Nazi Germany won? World War II.
World War II. Boy, what a hellish place that must be.
Yes, it is. It's extremely bad. We basically, well, I've talked to some of the people, they popped in and they saw SWAT stickers in Richmond and they left. Didn't want them. That's about all we know.
Holy moly. Now, our theoretical physicists are presently in this dimension beginning to realize there are other dimensions. Some of our best are saying that. But they're speculating 10, some more, and you're saying as many as 50.
50 that we've explored. There are a lot more. We didn't find, basically, we found part of this technology in Europa, which has an intelligent race. I don't know if it has it here. We haven't really got to the point where we could explore.
We're very curious about Europa in this dimension, thinking it might have some form of life, but probably fairly primitive.
Well, this is, I don't know quite how to explain it. This dimension's probably, it's fairly dangerous to go to.
The one we're in, you're talking about the one?
Yes, the one that we're in currently, Senator, yes.
Stop with the senator stuff already.
Okay. All right.
I'm not a senator in this dimension.
Okay.
And I don't much have respect for a lot of them either.
Okay. Well, then I apologize.
So, in fact, it worries me to even think that I might be one in another.
Okay.
But Arizona would be a good state.
It's a very nice state.
Anyway, this is no kidding on this dangerous dimension stuff. I mean, I'm reading this environmental news, and the ozone layer is getting gigantic to the point where they say it's going to be affecting us up north here the way Australia is affected. The ocean is warming. The storms are getting worse. Things are going to hell in a handbasket, really.
Well, we're concerned about that, and we're also concerned about, I guess, how conspiratorial the United States government is.
Oh, we are so conspiratorial.
It is.
Even my listeners, believe me, my listeners are so conspiratorial.
Yes.
I am too. Now that I think about it. But why are you here?
Basically, like I said, I'm here to basically to scout out different areas to determine whether or not to actually present ourselves to governments. That's one of the things I do.
Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that's a danger? No, not such a good idea.
It's a very dangerous idea. Here, we've to basically say that I'm from the Confederate States of America.
That's going to get you in trouble right away.
It's going to get me in trouble. We did settle the slavery issue when Robert E. Lee was president.
So you're saying then that the Confederate States did not maintain slavery?
No,
perhaps a longer period of time, but not.
It basically it went away. He had what was called a Lafourche plan, which slaves were able to buy their freedom, and they had a choice of going back to Liberia or staying here. And if they stayed here, they had to basically move out of the state that they were originally enslaved in. And at that time, we were basically annexing Mexico, and there was a lot of land down there.
So, boy, in your dimension, we have a lot more land. I mean, we swallowed Canada in one quick bite, and then a lot of Mexico as well, huh?
Well, the Confederate States took Mexico. We took Mexico, and then what you call the United States took Canada. Yes, sir.
So you all were rebels with a real cause.
Yes, we were. I guess now
bunch of land grabbers is what you are.
Well, that was quite a while ago.
I know. That's what they say here too. So, what is the future for this dimension? Is it a rosy one or?
I don't know.
Kind of a poopy one.
I guess the thing that we're most surprised about, since we went to a lot of dimensions with this level of technology, is the lack of space travel that you have done. I've seen other, I've seen other areas with the same tech level or the same technology that you have, and they have already have a colony on the moon. They've already landed people at Mars. They're towing asteroids.
Listen here, I'm pressed by the clock. I've got to take a break. Do you want to hold on? You're really an interesting person.
Yes, I can hold on for just a little bit longer.
Just a little longer?
Probably maybe 10 more minutes. I really don't. It's conspiratorial. I really don't like to.
All right. Give me 10 minutes. I'll be happy with that. All right. Stand by. In this dimension. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Don't touch that dial. That's kind of time travel, right? The year of the cat.
Want to take a ride? Call Art Bell.
We have a PhD type professor coming on to talk about time travel, real time travel. It's such a romantic notion for me. How about you? Can you imagine another time? Maybe another dimension, another world, another way things worked out in time. Really, really interesting stuff. Anyway, we're going to get back to our dimensional traveler in a moment. All right, I'm only accepting calls from time or dimensional travelers, and I'm not sure there is a really big difference. And by the way, thank you for waiting, caller. Is there a big isn't dimensional travel a type of time travel?
Not really. As far as our scientists can tell, no, not really. What happens is, I guess time is same. When I go back to my dimension, it's the same time as it is here.
So time is linear in each different dimension.
Yes, as far as we know. I guess one thing.
So that means Art Bell, the talk show host, and Art Bell, the senator, do they live to be different ages?
Yes, they can. I mean, I know of you at least in one other dimension where you host. You're not going to believe this. You host a talk show on the moon. You are basically broadcast from the moon.
From the moon.
From the moon.
I would entertain that option if it were given to me. Listen, there's somebody who would like to ask you a quick question. On my international line, where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Larry. I'm calling from Sudbury, Ontario, 300 miles north of Toronto. Mm-hmm.
Actually, territory that isn't even actually Canada.
That's right.
To my present.
There is an Ontario. It's just another flag in the United States.
All right. It's Robert, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a question.
Sure.
What are the cars like there? Are there Chevys, Fords? Do they drive differently? Same kind of transmissions? Some of the names of the cars?
Really good questions, yeah.
Basically, we have what's called in Atlanta, which is our equivalent of Detroit, is what's called Trafalgar Iron Works, and they have a variety of different models and makes.
So, in other words, that is your Detroit.
Yeah, Atlanta is basically our Detroit. Basically, I guess what would be called a lot of, I'm going to be polite here, I guess a lot of, y'all prefer to call Negroes blacks, right? I want to make sure that I don't offend anybody, but blacks
in this dimension would be proper.
Okay, would be blacks.
Yes.
Okay, blacks moved up into, I guess, the Iowa area, and there's a town, very large town there called New Jerusalem, which is the
New Jerusalem in Iowa,
the United States.
Now he asked about cars. Can you describe any automobiles?
Pretty much they would be the same. Ours mostly run on electric. We don't have a lot of diesel.
Figures.
We in the South prefer a big muscle car.
How can you have a muscle electric car? Well, I guess you could if you had enough electricity.
Do you have gasoline at all?
Yeah. Do you? What?
Hello?
We lost him. We lost him. He's gone. He's gone. We lost him.
He's out of gas.
He said out of gas. He said he only had 10 minutes, and I guess
that's true.
His 10 minutes are up.
But I love questions like that, Art.
Well, so Detroit is virtually in Atlanta, huh?
Yeah, interesting. I also wanted to ask him about trains and aircraft.
How would you guys feel being consolidated as U.S., never having been?
Well, if it was the natural evolution of history, I mean, it would be fine. You know what I mean? As long as you don't force the issue. I mean, if that's the way it had happened, well, that's the way it had happened.
That's right.
We're at the same time, Canada and the United States are both very different.
So you wouldn't have that medical
very
system.
Much the same.
You wouldn't have that medical system up there. You wouldn't have, but you would have.
Well, that medical system is on shaky legs right now. There's a lot of controversy.
Actually, I've heard that. Yeah. All right. Well, listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, you take care. Caller from Canada. Well, in this dimension. First time caller line. You are on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
Art, how are you?
I'm quite well. How about yourself?
Well, I'm doing quite well, thank you. Listen, it's been a long time. I've been listening to you for years.
For years now, huh?
Yeah, yes, I have.
Are you a time traveler?
Well, yeah, something happened to me because of your show.
What?
Well, first of all, it goes back to 1995. I'm located up here on the Russian River in Santa Rosa on KSRO country, and we were flooded. Our house was basically cut in half. I was forced then to work many days in a row. I'm a truck driver. I've listened to you for years over the night, like you have mentioned.
Yes. The time travel part.
Well, the time travel part goes like this. I was working so many days that I caught one of your shows, and I listened to Malachi Martin.
Yes.
And he told me or to most of your audience, you know, how to pray, how to accept acceptance. And something happened, man.
What?
I'm tired. I've gone I'm running illegal. I'm going 23, 24 days in a row.
I hear a lot of truckers do that. You know?
Yeah, but, you know.
And so you had an epiphany on the road somewhere.
No, man.
No? Something
happened. And suddenly I got touched. I felt like I got hit by a little golden wand or whatever that hit me on the top of my head.
You sure that you just didn't bang your head on as you were getting out of the truck or something?
No. I made sure that that's not what happened. If anything, it woke me up to a lot more than what I knew in the past, and I started to see into the future. And what I started to see into the future was this. I didn't see so much of the doom and gloom. What I started to see was the things that the natural changes. We're going through a tremendous rate of change right now, and it includes all of us. But most importantly, what I saw in a flash, in an instance, what I saw was a better place to be. In other words,
how far ahead is that? Because right now the signs, the canaries are dropping like flies here.
Yeah, I realize the canaries are dropping like flies. I realize that we've got global warming and there's chunks of ice melting and breaking off.
Right. So then when does it get better?
The better part is around the corner, and I would say maybe in 10 years. What I saw was something that flashed upon me.
So you didn't actually, then you didn't really travel in time. You saw ahead in time is what you did.
Well, I'm not exactly sure how you would say that. All I know is that something touched me.
Were you actually, okay, let's put it this way. Were you seemingly there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear that.
No, hold on a second. I know what you're going to say, Art. I know what you're going to say.
What?
Hold on, man. No, I mean this is something that happened in an instant.
Well, what about?
In a moment.
No, I understand that. But look, there would be critics who would say, "You said you were driving illegal. You were doing 1 million hours. You shouldn't have done it. You had a brain spasm."
No, it wasn't a brain spasm. No,
a trucker's brain spasm.
Well,
how do you know? Because that would be the criticism. I mean, especially with what you said.
Well, I'll tell you exactly how I know. First of all, it was a warm feeling, and it was a feeling of acceptance, and it kind of glowed the whole cab of inside my truck after so many years of not really believing, so to speak, being a hard, kind of tough guy, and all of a sudden realizing and seeing something that was so cool. I said, you know what, there is something else out there, and it's powerful, and you know what, I got an immediate calm about me, and for a moment, in a blink of an eye, in a blink of your eye, what I saw was the state of the future, and when
what you saw was a rosy future. All right, I've got it. So, trucking into the future. Guess we'll call that. I don't know. A trucker. I can't rule out the possibility that he whacked his head as he got out of the truck, or that his cab warmed up when he sort of fell off the cliff mentally after driving for so many hours. You've got to allow that at least as a possibility. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Yeah, hi, Art.
Hello.
I've been doing some dimensional traveling.
Yourself, huh?
Yeah.
So again, well, okay, then let me ask you like I did the first caller, who apparently had a prepaid phone card that ran out.
Yes, sir.
Is time linear in every dimension, as he suggested?
Yes.
It is. And from what is the dimension like that you are from?
It's very similar. And that's one problem that they had there was when I was sent, they gave me this special card that I was supposed to, when I come back.
You were sent.
Huh?
You were sent.
Yeah. That when I was supposed to come back, I was supposed to check it to make sure I was in the right dimension.
Yes.
And it didn't match.
Oh, brother. So in other words, you're saying you were tossed here by mistake.
Well, we found out that there are so many multiple dimensions that it's almost impossible to get back to your own. You can get back to a similar one.
But getting back to precisely where you were is almost not possible, so it's like you're stuck here then.
Very difficult.
Well, if this one is kind of like the one you came from, or with very few, what are the differences? Can you describe any differences? Do they have dogs there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Houses?
Yeah.
Detroit, cars?
Right. The main
ozone depletion, ocean warming, all the problems we've got?
Basically, yes.
Any difference at all?
Well, there'd be differences like that one guy, you'd be like the senator, or, different senators, different congressmen at different times, little things. But basically, even if we lost the First World War, in some dimensions, it'd end up almost the same. There's different points of history that just absolutely have to happen.
Well, what about Canada and Mexico? And, I take it there is a Canada, there is a Mexico.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Well, there was one that I went to where Martin Luther King didn't exist. Malcolm X didn't.
These would
be radical.
Very, very different then.
Right. So the civil rights movement didn't happen.
Didn't happen?
Didn't happen.
Then what would the state of blacks be in your dimension versus this one?
Well, in that one, they were still segregated out, whites-only areas in malls,
Well, that stinks. So you're in you should count your lucky stars that you're in a better place.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah, that dimension was bad.
Are you bummed out that you're stuck here?
No. It's okay.
Do you frequently tell people what you're telling me now?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
That's probably a good idea.
Right.
A lot of them wouldn't take it real well.
Not really.
Well, listen, I certainly appreciate your calling me.
Oh, okay.
And you have a good night, sir. West of the Rockies, wait a minute here. Let me do this again. Oh, boy. West of the Rockies, are you there?
I'm here.
Good. You're on the air.
Yes. This is Bob in California.
Hello, Bob.
I met myself when I was 8 years old. I met myself.
Now, you see, I've heard you can't do that, but you're saying you can.
I met myself from the future. It was really, really weird. When I was 8 years old in grammar school, I'd like play alone during the recess period.
Right.
Like behind a tree with my little army men and my cars.
Oh, yes, I played with army men.
And this guy shows up, and he's like dressed all in white. It was almost like a uniform, and he had gray hair, almost white.
Yes.
And I kind of recognized him after the conversation, and I think it was me. But he asked me a lot of questions. He knew everything.
Oh, that's really intriguing. So, in other words, your older self from the future or a future came and met you.
Right.
How did you recognize yourself? How did you know it was you?
Good question. I think I recognized my teeth because I've got these very distinct bicuspid teeth that stick out, and I never had orthodontics. And I guess I had my permanent teeth by that age.
A sort of a Bugs Bunnyism?
Yeah, well, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
But very identifiable.
Distinctive. Yeah, it's like a fingerprint. And I recognized my teeth. And later, I also recognized the mole that
Other than your toothiness, how did you look? I mean, were you aging reasonably?
Well, at 8 years old, you're not all that discriminating, critiquing an adult. But I was clean. I had great white clothing, and I had gray or white hair. And I just asked myself a lot of questions about my brother and my parents and things like that. You know, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's kind of like I went back in time to psychoanalyze myself.
Now you're confusing me.
Well, see, it's like sometime in the future when I'm 60 or 70 years old, I somehow...
Obviously, you will go back, right?
I get access to a time machine or some kind of astral projection or something.
And whatever it is, you will go back and meet yourself at 6 years of age or whatever.
Well, I think it was closer to 8 or 9.
8 or 9,
yeah.
Whatever.
And,
I've got it.
I
Wow.
wish I could tell you some information. I wish I had given me a few hints of things that happen in the future that I could tell your audience.
But most of the questions that you had, I mean, obviously, I understand they'd be personal.
Yeah, I think I just went back there to kind of get a glimpse at myself when I was a child.
Which end of it do you really remember, or do you remember both ends? Do you remember?
No, I only remember what occurred, when I was 8. I'm just 36 right now.
Right.
So I guess sometime in the future when I have white hair, I got a little bit of gray already. And I've got this mole that showed up under my eye that this guy had.
Same mole, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, at 8 I didn't have it, but I've got it about 5 years ago. And
well, we're getting there. I mean, this is nearly enough to convict you if it was a crime. A mole and a toothiness and other general characteristics that you could see where you must have been really weird.
Well, it didn't really dawn on me until this mole sort of started growing on my cheek, and then I sort of thought back to that memory, and as my face kind of grew, think of yourself when you were 8. If you were to meet yourself today, would you recognize yourself?
What an interesting question. I was an annoying little SOB. I'd probably recognize myself. So, I guess, but I'm not, now that I think about it, I'm not really sure. So, but you obviously did, and what a weird thing it must have been.
I thought I just should share it with you, and maybe you can...
And how weird it must be to think that you are going to do it. I mean, this is something that lies in your fairly immediate future.
No. I have white hair in the person I met, so I think it's probably 30 years.
Yeah, well, 30 years, but 30 years are cosmically is a, it's a blink in time. There's nothing. It's nothing. All right. Well, listen, thank you very, very much for calling.
Okay.
I've got to scoot. We are going to talk about time tonight, as we already have been, but now with an expert. I'm Art Bell, and from the high desert, this is Coast to Coast AM. All right, here comes Dr. David Anderson. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Art.
Where are you, roughly?
We're located on Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York?
That is correct, yes.
Way back there. All right. Doctor, I must tell you, time travel is probably the most interesting romantic notion and pursuit that I have. All my life I have contemplated its possibility, and so we're going to have a lot in common, I feel. How did you pray tell, with all your formal education, get involved in something so on the edge?
Well, it's amazing. I think to you and us today it's on the edge, but I think within the next 5 to 10 to 15 years we're going to see a lot of common applications of time control theory and technology in our daily lives. Where I initially began, though, was when I was young, I always had an interest in mathematics and physics. And as you mentioned earlier, I did spend about 5 years doing research and development at the Flight Test Center, the Air Force Flight Test Center in the Mojave Desert. There I got involved in space-time research. And I think the enlightening day for me was we were trying to solve a problem with some of our satellite systems. We had an unexplained variance in our satellite positions where they were drifting so much every year. And I was assigned to the project. We solved the problem. And about 2 years later, after solving the problem, I went back and I looked at the numbers, and what fell out of that was a lot of new models with regards to space-time and its ties to magnetism and energy.
Okay, slow down. So you had an anomaly in one satellite or a constellation of satellites?
No, it was basically a number of different space-based satellite systems. They were drifting. Each year, we predicted, and we had many models available to us where we thought the satellites would be.
Should be.
Could be, yes.
Based on all kinds of factors, gravity, the orbit, a million different factors, I suppose, huh?
Absolutely. But what was the confusing issue to everybody was the satellites were not where they were predicted to be. And it turned out, and the bottom line was that it was due to the results of what's called frame dragging, a prediction that comes out of Einstein's general theory of relativity.
Frame dragging?
Yes.
What is that?
Well, frame dragging is a phenomenon predicted by general relativity that talks about how a spinning mass, like the Earth or the Moon, actually will drag space and time around it slightly to a very small degree.
I understand exactly what you're saying. The rotation itself is actually causing time and space itself to be slightly perturbed. Is that?
That is correct. That's a good explanation. Yes.
Wow. The implications of that, then.
Well, I think the implications that came out of that, Art, was that it wasn't so much that we solved the problem. What we realized, we came up with a new mathematical model that not only corrected the satellite predictions and where they should be, but it also illustrated to us some new relationships that existed between space and time and energy and electromagnetic fields. I guess a coupling of those different technologies that weren't apparent before. And from that coupling, that's when my passion, I think, it was always a passion, but like you, I think from that point, it really became an obsession.
Okay, but you did all this for, as you point out, the very prestigious Air Force Flight Test Center. When you explained to the powers that be what you had discovered, how did they handle that? Because you were telling them something entirely new in science, and I wouldn't think they'd take that real well.
Well, you're absolutely right. Sometimes different establishments that were in place are a little slow to hear new ideas, but it really wasn't the case there. Initially, as I mentioned, the problem was solved with a mathematical model. And at the time when we solved the problem, we were very pleased. We were very happy. We had a new, reliable system to predict, where our satellites would be.
And ultimately, I suppose that's all they, bottom line, cared about. They wanted a predictable model.
That's correct. And I did not even recognize what I was holding in my hand until 2 years later. And at that point, I was just on my way to leave the Air Force, and I decided that I would pursue that research on my own after the fact.
And so where did you, you're back in private life, where did you take that research from that point? Or how did you proceed from that point?
Well, I spent probably a good part of, I would say, 8 to 10 years doing nothing but trying to refine that mathematical model, doing a lot of different research, a lot of different development. And I think the biggest milestone for me was I finally reached a point, I think in the early 1990s, where I realized that some types of time control technology were achievable today. And at that point, I began to fund and launch the Time Travel Research Center in 1995.
Okay, you keep saying time control technology. Define for me what you mean by that.
Time control is interesting because anytime you tell somebody you're working in space-time physics, the first thing they always joke about is, so your mission is to build a time machine. And I won't deny that that's a key focus and a passion for all of us here. But the initial application of our technology will be not for sending somebody through space and time. It'll be more for applications in everyday life. One of our key focus areas is in medical applications.
Or as they said in a recent great movie, baby steps.
Exactly.
So what application of control of time can you imagine early on?
Oh, early on, I think two of our most high interest areas right now, where we receive most of our funding and most of our focus, is in two areas. The first is the medical industry, and the second is an industrial process application. And the medical industry is actually our short-term focus is the development of the capability to use this technology for organ preservation, to help store and preserve organs while they're awaiting transplant. Now, the medical industry and the communities that we're working with right now, they really see that as a stepping stone. What they really want to see our time warp field technology used for is for eventually medical stasis fields that will help slow or stop the progression of disease, and eventually someday...
Okay, wait, you're already ahead of me. Let's back up to organs for just a second. If you apply time control technology to the preservation of organs, does that mean, for example, that somebody who has a head trauma and dies, whose organs are going to be used for transplantation, in some manner or another, you would apply time technology to keep the organs fresh?
Yes, that may be the best thing to do, Art, would just be explain a little bit about what our time warp field technology is.
Okay, in a way we can digest, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, our time warp field technology allows us to create today what we call a small self-contained time warp field. The field size that we work with, it's about a 30 to 40 centimeter diameter field. So it's a spherical field. Within that field, we are able to adjust to a small degree the rate at which time passes relative to the time rate outside of the field.
Wow.
So an object inside of that field will experience a slightly accelerated or slightly retarded time rate relative to anything outside. So by placing an organ that's awaiting transplant inside of that field, we can actually slow down the rate at which time passes for that organ, making it preserving it much longer.
Absolutely fresh organs.
Absolutely.
But you're really, people need to know you're deadly serious about this. You say you can create a 30 to 40 centimeter. How big is that?
That would be roughly about 10 to 12 inches today.
10 to 12 inch area where time is either going faster or slowing down. Is it a cumulative process, Doctor? In other words, the longer something remains within this field, the longer the progression or regression in time?
Absolutely. Once we, typically what we do is once we establish the field and we place an object or test instrumentation inside of the field, and we adjust the time rate, that time rate, say it's 50% of the rate at which time passes outside of the field.
Holy smokes. Really?
That is correct, yes.
You're telling me you've really done this?
Absolutely. I'm not saying that we're not without problems, but we have made some great steps and achievements, especially last year. Last year was a very successful year for us early on.
Good Lord, Doctor. Do you realize what you're telling everybody here tonight?
I realize what we're telling everybody. I will tell everybody, though, also that as much as we've seen some great success, there are also many challenges that we face as well. So I think in many times, as much as we've had success, there are probably more questions now than we have answers for.
Let me begin, and I guess there will be some proprietary information you can't give me, but how would such a field be created? Can you give me any broad outline?
Well, there is some proprietary information I cannot provide, but to give you a rough outline, creating the field, I'd say, would pretty much happen in a three-step process. First, we use an antenna configuration that introduces a high-speed rotational magnetic field in the core area of the field.
Bingo.
Okay,
I had a feeling it was going to be that.
Well, actually, believe it or not, that's probably not the most important element. It's important. We found out from a stability standpoint it's important. But then we use an ejector system that establishes what I'll just say is a necessary core environment, and that's the key element there is the injection of a gas reagent. The third step is that we use a high-energy laser array to induce and then modulate the field. And this is, I guess I'll say for some of the scientists out there, this is similar, not identical, but similar to what's done in high-energy plasma physics.
Well, let me tell you what's blowing me away about this, all right?
Certainly.
I don't know whether you are familiar with the story of the Philadelphia experiment.
Of course I am, absolutely. I share the same passion with you.
Okay. Well, I've interviewed a number of people who claim involvement in that. And the technical description that they gave, Doctor, of the equipment that was used in that experiment, which really was a radar evasion experiment more than it was time travel or invisibility or anything like that. But they used rotating fields, magnetic fields, and RF as well, rotating RF fields. I'm trying to remember the exact configuration and power amounts, but are you familiar with the story vaguely?
Yes, I am. As a matter of fact, I know what they did is that they were trying to degauss the ship so it couldn't be detected by mines, so they were using magnetic coils around the ship with high-energy magnetic fields. What I would say there is a big difference between what we're doing and there. But also, as I heard you describe what created the field, the alarm bells were going off saying, ding, 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 that sounds somewhat similar. Yeah, sometimes I wish I didn't have to say those four words, but it is an important part. What we found out was when we induce a field, the most important part is establishing the right core environment, getting the gas reagent distributed properly, and then firing our laser ray into the field. And like I said, it's very, very similar to high-energy plasma experimentation. We found out, though, that the rotational magnetic field helped us solve some stability problems. It's a key component, but it's not a driving element.
Holy smokes. Well, excuse me, but this is going to be breaking news for a lot of people, Doctor. I mean, that we can even do this. It's certainly news for me, and I didn't expect you to tell me this tonight. I thought you would be a theoretical research group only, not actually involved in the hardware. And so what you're saying tonight is a total blowaway for a lot of people. You understand that?
Again, I understand that. And I guess I would let people know as well, as much as we have seen progress, like I said, we have many, many challenges. We see the benefit to the medical community. The organ preservation experimentation that we're doing right now, that's a stepping stone. Like I said, the medical community has their eye on the possibility of eventually stasis field and disease regression.
Sure.
The other area where a lot of people are expressing interest in even funding our research to a certain degree is for industrial process acceleration. And when I say that is, there are many scientific and industrial processes that take a tremendous amount of time to complete.
Right.
And the ability to accelerate certain test processes or industrial process or chemical reaction
would have obvious tremendous economic value.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For us, it's kind of interesting. Our biggest from our heart, our biggest area is to see the application of this in the medical applications, because we see it offering a tremendous, not only a brand new field of technology, but a tremendous benefit for people around the world.
Well, of course it would be. it would be, Mr. Anderson's one step for mankind. Neil Armstrong's one step, you're Anderson, for mankind. A giant leap for mankind is what it would be, to be able to preserve organs with actual time. Time travel might not be the right phrase for it, huh?
Yeah. That's why I carefully use the word time control technology. Like I said, we all here have a passion that someday we might be able to build that great machine of fiction. But for now, we see the short-term applications being very, very different.
If you look 50 years, 100 years ahead, if you project your research out 100 years, could there be a time machine?
I think the answer to that is yes, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Well, I have a lot.
Art, the one thing I would say is one thing we have not done. We did early last year. We had demonstrated our time rate acceleration retardation using mechanical and electrical clocks.
Yes.
But we were always hesitant to use it on a living organism.
All right.
What we did last year.
Hold that. It's a great place to hang everybody up, including me. I want to hear this. Stay right where you are. All right, back now to Dr. Anderson, Dr. David Anderson, and I must tell you that obviously many of you are going to want to read more. On my website right now is a link to Dr. David Anderson's website, which is www.time-travel.com. So if you'll go to my website and just click on that link, you can do a lot more reading about what you're hearing about right now. Would that be accurate, Doctor?
That would be very accurate.
Good. All right. Now, obviously, you experimented first in this field you created with inanimate objects of some sort.
That is correct. Our test instrumentation we use both mechanical and electronic clocks and other types of test instrumentation.
Clocks.
And up until earlier last year, we really avoided doing any testing on living organisms, at least early on.
Up until last year.
That is correct.
If you took a normal clock, a wound clock that was accurate, and you put it in the field, what could you prove, or what could you?
What you would have would be a perfect demonstration, which we've done over and over again, of showing how the time rate acceleration happens. We place one clock within the field and then one clock outside of the field as a reference clock, and then we can show the divergence as the field is adjusted.
And how much divergence have you demonstrated?
Oh, actually, it's very specific. We've been able, again, we use the term reference time rate. That's the time rate, the rate at which time passes outside of the field.
Right.
Within the field, we've been able to go up to 300%, an acceleration factor of 3 over the reference time rate. And inside the field, we've been able to stably go down to about 13.2% of the time rate, actually slowing the rate at which time passes.
Holy smokes.
And we've even gone below that, but when we go below that, we do run into some, I guess I'll say, not stability problems, maybe a easy way to put it.
Stability problems.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we really haven't tested.
How would a stability problem manifest?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of a real succinct way to put this. We have, when we create a field, there's obviously a time rate outside of the field and a time rate inside of the field, and there's a variance. And inside what we call the boundary layer, which you can picture as like a thin shell, like an eggshell, around that spherical field.
Right.
That shell area, or the boundary layer, is where the time rate actually changes. And it has a peculiar effect of Dopplering frequencies and energy. So what happens is that if we have certain types of energy inside or outside of the field, heat can be Dopplered up to light. Light can be Dopplered up to other things. Higher temperatures and light could be Dopplered up to gamma radiation. And what happens is, when I said the stability problem, our shell boundary layer is a very thin shell. The word shell is very applicable, all the way from 300% down to about 13.2%. What happens as we try to get closer and closer to the zero time rate, and when we pass through it, that shell actually expands. It becomes thicker. and that Doppler effect carries all the way through almost to the center of the core. And when we did our first test last year on plant seedlings, our first test on living organisms, we actually ended up cooking about 80% of the plant seedlings that were inside the field.
Did you say cooking them?
Yeah, literally.
With regard to inanimate objects, backing up for a second,
sure.
If you are you able to actually observe the object within the field?
Yes, we are. Actually, a question we get asked a lot. Our first projects, we call it Project Dark Star. That's the study of our time warp field technology. And yes, we can see objects in the field. As we accelerate the time rate, it actually, frequencies get Doppler down, moving from inside the field to outside. So you actually see a darkening and a more of an opaqueness to the object as we accelerate it. As we reduce it, you see the reverse. But yes, we can observe.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's like magic. To a lot of us who had no idea such a thing was going on, it's like magic. So the inanimate object begins to darken down.
Yeah, and it's not the object itself. It's really just the Doppler effect, again, that we see within the boundary layer of the field.
In other words, optically, how it's appearing to us because of what it's being subjected to?
Yeah, basically, every color has a frequency, and as the light or that color moves outward through the field, when we're accelerating time, that frequency is actually Doppler down, so colors will actually shift in shades when we're accelerating slowly, and it gets more dramatic as we increase the time rate divergence.
Now, you mentioned seeds, and I can understand that as a very early biological experiment. But what in that field or the creation of the field would be cooking the seeds?
Well, again, what happens is to maintain the field, as I mentioned, there were 3 steps in implementing a field. The third one was inducing the field with the reagent with a high-energy laser array. We have lasers, and that after a field is induced, the lasers still fire at a certain pattern. When they do, they're inducing energy into the boundary layer of the field. That energy, again, if we're retarding time, is Dopplered up, which takes it up to, depending on the degree which we're trying to retard time, it'll actually Doppler that up to more harmful radiation. So when I say cook, I'm not necessarily saying heat.
I understand.
More radiation.
Is the laser the modulating agent?
The laser is used. We need a certain amount of energy in the field to maintain it, and that's what the lasers are used to do. Our first model of our time warp field generator included 3 lasers and one, we call it an injector sensor array. Our current model we're using right now has 12 lasers and 6 injector sensor arrays on it. So we actually have 12 lasers that are used to maintain and modulate the field.
To create such a field, Doctor, do you have any concerns about safety? Has that occurred to you as you've been moving through this incredible experimentation that I think nobody knew about until now?
Well, the answer is yes. You mentioned early on baby steps, and that's something that's actually very important to us. A lot of people ask us, why haven't we tested this on animals or people yet? And there's 2 reasons. The first one is the field size is too small, but more importantly, this Doppling effect or this boundary layer problem where it Dopplers energies and frequencies literally can have very damaging effects on living tissue. And we know...
So you might end up cooking a mouse, for example.
Exactly. Or radiating the mouse is maybe a better way to put it. But we know we can solve this problem. And Art, when we solve this problem, the impact this technology could have on research, finding cures for diseases like heart disease, cancers, diabetes, and AIDS is absolutely profound. And eventually when we can use this on a living person, the science fiction days of stasis fields or disease regression fields might not be science fiction anymore.
What do you believe stands between you and the ability to subject biological entities to this? In other words, what in the manner that you now create the field, there's going to have to be a whole new manner of the creation of that field to avoid the effect on biological organisms, isn't there?
Yeah, that's correct. The first issue is understanding the boundary layer better. And I got to tell you, we've had great successes in the last 2 years, and we're making some great results. But when it comes to the boundary layer and understanding it, which is very important to us, we must understand it better. We have more questions than we have answers.
Sure.
But to give you an example, when we had our 3-laser system compared to today, we had to inject about I think it was close to, I can't remember exactly now, it was about 20 to 25 times more power to induce and maintain the field. As we've learned more about the boundary layer, we've now cut that back by a factor of 20 to 25. So as we bring that energy down, and that's actually the biggest achievement here, is to be able to create a time warp field with a lower amount of energy. As we bring that energy down, it's going to help solve the problem. And
kind of like cold fusion trying to get to room temperature.
Yeah, I guess I never looked at it quite that way, but I guess you could say that, certainly. There's some analogy there.
Whew, this is so much to digest. When I asked about safety, when you create a time warp field, is there any danger? It's kind of like when they drop the atomic bomb. They first, many credentialed scientists thought it might ignite the entire atmosphere and there might be a chain reaction, our atmosphere would burn up. They didn't know when they pushed the button. They really didn't know. So when you create a field like that, was there any concern as you approached throwing that first switch that something totally unexpected might occur that could be dangerous?
I think that feeling grows every day. Not that we've had any major problems. We have a lot of respect for what we do, respect for the technology and the risk. I mean, we run this like a full-blown flight test almost. I mean, our pre-test, I'll give you an example. Our typical live experiments run maybe about 2 to 3 hours. The pre-planning and the effort and the pre-experiment preparation runs about 2 to 3 days. And the post-experiment analysis cycle and the modification for the next test plan can run a week or two. So to give you an idea, that gives you a little bit of proportion. We have a lot of respect for it.
Without getting specific, Doctor, because you may not want to, I don't know. What you mentioned funding. Obviously, the kind of work you're doing requires a lot of money. Where does the money come from? What kind of sources?
Well, early on, I had to fund a lot of my own research. Now, the funding, and I think it's no secret, we get funding from both private investors as well as some agencies in the government have interests in what we're doing. But to be honest with you, the largest part of our funding and interest, it comes from really 2 areas. If I had to give you the top 2, one, it would be from the medical community because they see the long-term possibility, and they also have a lot of money to invest every year. The second area, outside of that, I'm trying to think. It's almost a toss-up, but we do have some interest from the government. But I'd say number 1, it really is the medical community, and then there's some people with regards to industrial process and research or scientific test acceleration.
With regard to any funding that might be coming from the government, an obvious question: what application do they appear to be interested in?
Well, I really can't talk a lot about specifics.
I'll read right between that line, no problem, because I think I know the answer to it.
What I can say is that that's what actually, believe it or not, the one thing I can say is that a lot of people hear the name Project Dark Star, which is the name we gave our initial project to explore time warp field technology. And a lot of people think that it sounds very sinister, like a military weapons program. Actually, it was only because of the Doppler effect in the boundary layer and what we saw visually.
In other words, you didn't really name this project Project Dark Star until you made the observation of the field change.
That is correct. And I tell you, to sit here and observe this thing, it's absolutely amazing. You said it before, is that when you see something like this work, we all know that gravity and time can warp space and time, that time is not an absolute. This is all science fact. It's not science fiction. But to see it actually in action at this scale is absolutely fascinating.
Mind-boggling, actually.
It is. And I think what's interesting is I think we don't even get, after the amount of time I've spent on this, I never get lose my fascination and wonder when I see us open up a field and start adjusting time rates. But the people who see this field in operation, Art, the most interesting thing is they always call me back in a month, 3 to 4 weeks, and they say, I can't look at the world the same way. I said they knew in their back of the mind that time and space were not an absolute, and that time is mutable. And but when you walk down the street anymore, you don't.
I understand that. How could you look at the world, everything, in the same way at all, ever again, once you had observed that?
Well, it's amazing. Sometimes you have to ask the opposite question, and I'd say to your listeners, how can you not look at it? We know. I mean, the fact that time is mutable and can be dilated, and that we live in a universe that's made up of a dynamic web of energy. This is the fabric of the universe and the world we live in. But sometimes we tend to shrink the size of the magic and all the wonder in the world to the size of our daily routine and material possessions. We have a cultural and biological evolution that we've been through that lets us look at time in one specific way.
Let me rip you back to the reality or the myth of the Philadelphia experiment. Do you think, Doctor, that there really was such an experiment? The reports of its effects may have been overblown, or maybe they were right because they talked about some pretty horrible injuries that occurred. Is that possible in your way of thinking?
Oh, wow. That's such a hard question because there's so much information on the subject out there. It's hard to know what was real, what wasn't, and unfortunately I wasn't there, Art. I wish I could say I was. Hey, who knows?
But I'm saying, based on what you know now about what you have done, if they had been doing what was described at that time, is it possible they would have done great biologic injury to, the volunteers?
I think, again, the technology that we're using is drastically different. But I think the answer to that is yes. I think you're pretty familiar with the dangers of electromagnetic radiation. Was this due to a rip or tear in time, or was it due to the radiation effect?
Or a little of both.
A little of both.
I mean, you'd be cooking people with immense amounts of rotating RF fields, as was described in that experiment, and so it could have been a little bit of both.
You know what's interesting, Art, is that obviously my background includes it's probably 20 years of math and science, and what's interesting is I've just started opening up my mind about a year ago and doing more work studying the nature of time and philosophy. But we also run, and I'm not trying to plug here, but I think it would be helpful for your listeners. We have an organization called the Time Travel Research Association that's dedicated to studying the topics of time travel on any subject, from the Philadelphia experiment to the Montauk Project to philosophy to art to religion and all the ramifications. And I think when you ask me the question, do I believe, I'll just tell you I'm not going to say I don't believe, because as I've studied more and more outside of the rigid walls of math and physics that I've grown up in and lived all my life in, I realize that there's much to be learned there.
Is it just coincidence, Doctor, that you're on Long Island?
I can anticipate where you're going with regards to the story of the Philadelphia experiment and the Phoenix Project being moved to Montauk.
That's right.
Is it a coincidence? Consciously, it is a total coincidence. Who knows subconsciously? Maybe there's a master plan or a path for me somewhere in the universe that led me to Long Island near Montauk. But consciously,
I mean, that must have entered your mind.
You know what? And yes, people ask me the question all the time. Actually, the Time Travel Research Center, when it was founded in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and we still run one small office there.
Maybe so, but you're in Long Island.
And now we're in Long Island. Yes, our base of operations is out here. Yes.
Oh my goodness, what the future might hold for you, huh?
Absolutely.
You must spend a lot of time thinking about that. I certainly would. God, that's incredible. Listen, Doctor, hold on. We're at the top of the hour, so you've got a good break here. Oh my. Did any of you have any idea that this was going on? That you can actually move forward, accelerate time, manipulate time in a forward direction, or to some degree in reverse as well? And it's being done now? We'll be right back. All right, some absolutely fantastic claims being made, and so once again, I think this is important. David Anderson, the man you're listening to right now, is a former U.S. Air Force officer, flight test engineer, and scientist. He developed a passion for space-time study while conducting research at the prestigious Air Force Flight Test Center, where he found actually cured an anomaly in satellites being not where they ought to be, and that led to all the time study. For the last 20 years since, he's been formulating and developing his breakthrough concepts in space-time physics and the study of time. His work led to the development of what is today called time-warped field theory. His research holds the first promise for the development and application of practical time-control technology. In 1995, Dr. Anderson founded the Time Travel Research Center, today the world's most advanced research lab dedicated exclusively to the study and development of time-control technology and its application in Long Island. His company also sponsors an organization called the Time Travel Research Association that networks time travel information and interests from more than 80 countries around the world. Here he is again. Doctor, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. I think it's worth a minute to take some time to ask you about the nature of time, or what you believe with your research you understand, if anything at all, about the nature of time itself.
Oh, Art, I love this question.
Good.
Well, I think the best way to start with that question is to say that probably for about 2,000 years people have been asking it and have offered many answers, and I don't think I can improve on that. But I think one of the most important things that I always point out is that time is, to many of us, a very strange and curious thing. And one of the tests I'd encourage your listeners to do, if they haven't done it already, walk up to a friend or a family member or a stranger on the street and ask them, do you know what time is? And they'll all nod their head like, absolutely, yes, they do. Mm-hmm. And they're almost sure to answer yes. But when they do and you ask them to explain it, they'll never have an answer for you. They cannot find the words to explain what time is. And what's interesting is, even as far back as the 4th century, St. Augustine even said it differently. He said, what then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to one that asketh, I know not. And it tells you it's a very deep insight into what the psychology of time really is. I think also sometimes I think maybe after 2,000 years we don't seem to have a good definition for time.
No.
Maybe perhaps we don't want to understand it. A lot of times people talk about time with a negative connotation because maybe it's linked to our own mortality.
Sure, it's our enemy ultimately, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, my favorite quote that captures that whole meaning is from Star Trek Generations, time is the fire in which we burn. And the other one is time is a great teacher, but unfortunately it kills all its pupils. I feel that way sometimes.
But it may not necessarily always be so.
I think that is correct. I think that is correct, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I think, this is actually an interesting area for me, and I'll talk about it too much, Art, so you have to reel me in. But,
no, go.
A lot of times we feel that time exists independent of us. But honestly, perhaps this belief is really just an illusion, and time is really something that is measured and perhaps created in our mind and our body's perceptions. Maybe time doesn't really exist. Maybe time is really measured in the mind.
It is, after all. It is our invention, in a sense, isn't it? It's just a perception. In other words, objects move. We measure that movement, the stars, the planets, and therefore we know that it takes time, X number of, we can measure units of something or another for an orbit, say.
Yes.
But really, that really may be our invention.
That may be our invention. That's exactly right. If you look at physiological, biological time, maybe it's the impression it leaves on the mind. I mean, our mind expects the future, which then becomes the present. When it becomes the present, our mind attends to us, and then it becomes the past, which we remember. And maybe that future and past doesn't really exist. I think what's even more interesting, Art, if you look at the world of quantum physics today, I have so many friends working in this field, and you look at what's coming out of the hard science, out of the particle accelerators and super colliders,
right.
It's more in line with the notions of time and space that were offered by the Hindus, the Buddhists, and the Taoists 2,000 years ago.
Well, I was going to ask, in other words, you're working on the hardware aspect of time manipulation.
That is correct.
Which is really fascinating to me, but there may be another way to manipulate time in the metaphysical arena, or do you sort of...
The answer to that question, I have an answer that I can't really back up well. Again, my whole life has been living in the world of mathematics and physics and living within the rigid walls, inside the walls of analytical science. But I personally believe that as we keep developing our time control technologies and the applications emerge and then we look at true time travel or interdimensional travel, I think as much as we'll look at it with regards to technology and science in terms of hardware, I think at the same time we'll see great advances coming out of the study of the human mind and metaphysics and the power of the human mind.
Maybe so. But coming back to your hardware, if you put a clock in a time warp field, aren't there, in other words, what about this old thing of you cannot go back and meet yourself, or you would destroy yourself or something like that, or kill your grandfather, all these problems with potential time travel. On a smaller scale, wouldn't those problems also exist? In other words, if you've had a clock in a field and it's coming out of either the past or the future, in essence, when you bring it out of the field, doesn't it, in essence, collide with itself? Isn't there a potential problem there, or is there not? And if not, why not?
I don't believe in cause and effect or cause and consequence or whatever you want to say. I believe that cause and effect is dead. I think that that our world and the science of mathematics and physics now show that time travel to the future, time travel to the past, or time control technology is all real science. I think this notion of cause and effect is more along the lines of paradoxes. Like, for instance, it's nonsense to suggest that a moving object shrinks and gets heavier, or it's nonsense to suggest that an astronaut who travels to a distant star and returns will be younger than her twin brother she left behind. But it's not science fiction. It's science facts. And I think what we see here, Art, is really, these are sometimes what we call paradoxes, but I think these paradoxes are places where our rational minds really bump into their own limitations.
Well, I wouldn't see a paradox involved in, for example, an astronaut, as you point out, traveling, coming back, and relatively not having aged. Don't see a paradox there.
Correct.
But in creating a field, a time warp field, as you have done, I do see a potential paradox or effect of some kind. In other words, here we've got something rushing as you bring it back from the future or the past back into the present again.
Yes.
My mind can't wrap around that concept.
I think there's when we talk about the twin paradox or the astronaut traveling at high speeds. Okay, you're absolutely right. That's a time dilation in a forward direction. It's very simple to understand, and they're right. There's no way to go back into the past and change a cause and effect. But if you look at what Kurt Gödel did and Frank Tipler with regards to closed time-like curves and rotating cylinders, they have shown that travel to the past does not violate the laws of math and physics. It's reverse time travel again. Time travel to the past does
I'm not familiar with them. Please, what have they done?
Well, Kurt Gödel in the 1940s, it was a German mathematician. He came up with the concept of something called a closed time-like curve, and this could be a very detailed conversation.
That's all right.
Essentially, it shows that there's a concept called a light cone that many of your listeners might be familiar with. It's a space-time diagram, and it shows that if you're an object, you must move forward in time, and if you move forward in time, you can't move at a faster speed than the speed of light. So for every place in space, there's what's called a light cone, where the forward faces the future faces in one direction, and the past faces in another direction.
Okay.
However, the orientation of the future and the past, or space-time at every point of space, we live in a world, in a universe of curved space-time, can be different. So what Kurt Gödel showed, and he was the first person to present it, was that if you're in a curved space, when curved space could be created by heavy gravity, that light cone, if you followed a sequence of light cones that each pointed in a different direction, eventually they could loop back on yourself.
Heavy gravity as in really heavy gravity.
Very,
as in
heavy gravity.
Black hole, edge of black hole type gravity, right?
Not quite that magnitude,
no?
but very close, yes. And Frank Tipler took Kurt Gödel's work, and he expanded greatly on it, and even he published a number of papers on what's called the Tipler cylinder, or the rotating cylinder. And it talks about a hypothetical cylinder large, infinitely long cylinder you could build in space, heavy enough mass, you rotate it, you could actually fly a ship along a specific path and go back into the past. And Art, what's most exciting about this, I'd encourage your listeners to read about it, is the first proof that shows that travel to the past does not violate the laws of math and physics.
Well, that would be like Star Trek. In other words, they travel in essence, hyperdimensional space along a specific path and achieved time travel to the past.
Yeah, I think in some ways, like, for instance, in some of those movies where they did the slingshot around the sun, using the heavy gravity of the sun, that's where they were trying to capture, some of the science behind it.
Well, we've done those kind of slingshot things with some of our satellites to attain speeds to get outside. Around Jupiter, there's plenty of gravity there, for example.
Certainly.
I think we've been slingshotting things that way for some time.
Oh, so we see from satellites, Art, we see time dilation every day. When we have satellites that are on the opposite side of the sun from Earth, we can actually measure the time dilation due to gravity. We see the delays in the signals coming from the satellite due to the gravity of the sun. These are all, again, it's all science fact.
Doppler effect.
In that case, it's more of a it's a byproduct of Einstein's general relativity, that heavy gravity curves space-time, so the signal travels a longer path or a shorter path.
Well, a spacecraft way the hell out there should be able to get a signal back here at the speed of light. And are you suggesting to me that either it's getting here faster or slower as a result of the gravitational fields that it encounters on the way?
Absolutely. This is measured. This has been measured. I mean, this has been measured. I won't say dozens, hundreds of times.
Well, then aren't they sitting there scratching their heads, saying, "What the hell's going on?"
Oh, no. Actually, in this case, when you talk about the effect of general relativity on a small scale, dilating a signal so it comes back 2 seconds or a couple hundred milliseconds later than it should because it's passing nearby the sun.
Right.
That's a minor thing. It's relatively insignificant. But when you talk about increasing that to the point where, Frank Tipler's model took it, where you're close enough to heavy gravity for a long enough time, you literally can do it. And what's interesting, Art, nobody in the world, no physicist, no mathematician, since Frank Tipler published his paper in 1965, can disprove it. And, it's a great place. If somebody wants to study some of the fundamentals of time travel to the past, start with the work done by Frank Tipler.
Rotating?
Yeah. Actually, the name of his paper, you can find it, you can find some information on our website under Tipler cylinders or rotating cylinders.
Tipler cylinders. What specifically were they physically?
His was a theoretical model of a large, massive spinning cylinder. Yes. And actually, we have
You know what that reminds me of? I'm sure there's no way in the world you miss seeing the movie Contact.
No, I did see it. You're absolutely right, yes.
Good. Do you remember the giant machine?
Yes.
Do you remember the giant rotating cylinder? The rotations within rotations?
Yes, I remember that.
Did that seem really logical to you?
And believe it or not, there's a couple theories about time travel to the past. I'm going to answer your question a little bit roundabout. Is that one is using a Tipler cylinder, a rotating cylinder, you can accomplish reverse time travel. The other is with the possibility of a wormhole. One of the new ones put together by, I'm going to get his name wrong, Gott from Princeton University, I forgot his first name,
right,
was something called cosmic strings.
String theory.
Well, a little bit different. The concept is with a rotating cylinder, there's this theoretical object in space that might be a remnant of the Big Bang called a hypothetical cosmic string. And if that was to pass by a spinning mass, it could create it could create warp space-time or create
Doctor,
time
holy smokes, hold it right there. We'll be right back. Oh, my goodness. My guest, Dr. David Anderson. I'm Art Bell. All right, once again, Dr. David Anderson. Doctor, very quickly, a couple of things have come in. A lot of faxes are just pouring in here. A couple of them say the following. De Palma, in the mid-'60s, put an FM receiver above a shielded rotating mass, and the received frequency was shifted radically. Now, is that time travel or space-time alteration? Rotation, rotation, rotation.
Yeah, it seems to be a common element, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Could you mention the name of the person who did the experiment again?
De Palma. And here's another one. He put a clock over a rotating mass, and that clock slowed down. Again, a rotating mass, angular momentum equals changing space-time constants.
Well, as I mentioned, I'm not familiar specifically with this now.
Well, the name doesn't matter, but does the theory sound to you?
If the mass was extremely large, then the theory is it's consistent with Einstein's general theory of relativity. If the mass is small, then there would need to be something else going on for that type of time dilation to occur.
Okay.
Time variance to occur.
All right. Here's one. Hi, Art. I'm interested in time travel, but wonder how it can be determined that time warping is the real effect being achieved and not some other effect that simulates time travel. Can it absolutely be determined this is actual time acceleration or deceleration, for that matter?
Our experimentation is completely quantitative. Our reference imitation that we've used, like I said, we didn't do this just off of simply our tests with plant seedlings. We've used plant seedlings and germination cycles. We've used electrical clocks. We've used mechanical clocks. And we've accumulated the data. We've done the tests. And actually, that part of the testing is behind us. We have that part done.
With how much trepidation do you approach the next volley of tests?
Well,
what are they?
The next volley of tests is to compete. Is to continue to work on what we're doing with the tissue preservation. But the real big next step for us, Art, is to move into a living tissue or a live animal testing, which, testing with animals or a living organism is a very controversial area. But even more so, we actually, a lot of people feel our experimentation into the study of time is blasphemy or is something that we shouldn't be doing.
Well, I'm not sure of that myself. In other words, I do have questions. Since we don't, and we discussed this earlier, you freely admit we don't understand the nature of time, then we don't understand whether it's going to be, in essence, some sort of blasphemy, do we?
I don't.
That's a hard question.
No, it's a wonderful question. Those are the best kind of questions, Art. Is that I don't feel it's blasphemous. I think the nature of time, again, and our lack of understanding it is really, again, just a place where our mind is bumping into its own limitation. I mean, we live in a wonderful universe, a wonderful world filled with all kinds of magic, and we just don't see it and we don't understand it all the time. And that doesn't mean pursuing this is a wrong thing to do. Pursuing it with danger or risk to life would be a wrong thing to do. But pursuing time control technology and all the benefits that it's already showing us, and that, again, we hope to have this in everyday application within the next 5 to 10 years.
So you really see nothing but good morality and ethics involved?
Yeah, our biggest concern sometimes is could this technology be perverted or used for bad purposes?
Well, here's another faxer, a great show. Please ask Dr. Anderson if his funding is by the government, and at what point during his time research and development would the government come in, take control of his work in the name of national security. Now, before you say, won't happen, remember when Tesla died, our government, in fact, rushed in, grabbed everything he had, including all the files and everything in his lab, and took it. And we still, to this very day, have not seen it.
I don't know. As you know, I'm a patriot. I've spent a number of years as a scientist and engineer in the Air Force.
Right.
I'm very loyal to this country. I also keep one eye open. I don't know the answer to that. The government's interest in my work right now appears to be sincere and more of just a monitoring of the technology. I can't anticipate that. I'm not a naive person, but I like to think that that won't become an issue as long as we control the technology and the security well enough ourselves.
Oh, I don't know. There would be obvious military application, or they'd sure think of one.
Yeah.
And
eventually, yes, Art. I believe you're right. In another 5 to 10, I mean, right now, the everyday applications we're going to see first are harmless and totally beneficial in the area of medical and scientific testing. Could this technology, as it continues to advance, be perverted into something destructive or not for a good purpose? The answer is probably yes, but I'm not concerned about it right now because we're not at that point.
Well, I guess early on in the development of atomic energy, the primary goal was one of creating a bomb. You know, we weren't thinking of radiation for cancer cures, blunderbuss method as that may be. We were thinking about making a bomb to end a war.
Yes.
So you're not operating under that same kind of mandate and stress.
Not today, I'm not, no. And again, we monitor carefully. We obviously have a lot of security precautions in place. We protect our work. And again, even if somebody had access to all of our technology today, they would find it mostly, all the testing we've done, really, the technology today couldn't be used for anything.
Is your research facility nevertheless highly secure?
It's I can see it on nationwide radio. I'm going to say it's not secure. We're always looking for ways to improve it. We have a lot of precautions with regards to our facility, more importantly, our information and our systems. There's always ways to improve it, and you know what? We're always having attempted compromises. The last one was probably last week, so.
Compromises? You mean people trying to get your information?
Yeah, in this case, last week it was somebody trying to get information, trying to hack into our system, which was kind of a useless attempt, but it was attempted nonetheless.
Let me ask this, Doctor. If you're doing what you say you are doing in this country, then what are the Chinese doing? What are the Russians doing? What are the Swiss doing? What are the English doing? What's going on around the world? Do you have any sense at all of other parallel experimentation? Because that tends to occur with almost every new technology, parallel experimentation. What's going on elsewhere? Any hints?
Absolutely. First off, I'll tell all your listeners, if they're making a big mistake if they don't think that public investors, private investors, and governments all around the world are funding research in this area. Our government's doing it. It's a matter of public record.
Well, I didn't know that.
It's done under, I think back in the late 80s, as early as the late 80s, some of the investments started. They do it under the guise of labels like closed time-like curve research. Well, you know what a closed time-like curve is?
No, sir.
It's time travel to the past. It's retarding time travel to the past. That's exactly what it is. There's no other interpretation of it.
By what method?
Well, in this case, it was a theoretical funding that started back in the 80s by the U.S. government. It was funding of theoretical research. And this continues to go on. In the former Soviet Union, there were a number of projects in place. Those have kind of faded, mostly due to funding. There's still a few scientists there holding on. Dr. Novikov, who's the other person?
Yeah, they're pretty broke.
Yeah, that's their biggest problem right now. Alexander Frolov is also trying to do some work. He's not making quite as much progress as Dr. Novikov.
Do you think we're doing the leading research right now?
I think I think the answer to that is yes. I believe the answer to that is yes. You look at some of the theoretical work that Kip Thorne is doing, Dr. Gott in the United States. This is wonderful work. But again, I'm not naive. There is work going on in other areas. In China, I don't know.
You do understand that what you're saying to tonight to many people out there, including me, by the way, is a complete blowaway. We had no idea that such experimentation was underway anywhere, much less here, much less Long Island.
Well, I think the interesting thing is that I think the hardest part is like I said earlier. Sometimes we shrink all this magic in the world to the size of our daily routines, and we have a lot of cultural and biological evolution where we're conditioned that time is a certain thing. But what's interesting is these concepts. Like for instance, we were just talking before the last break about reversing time travel and the death of cause and effect. This is taught. This concept of space-time diagrams and closed time-like curves is now taught in college-level physics courses. And this is not, but what's interesting is because we don't see the effects of this apparent in our daily lives and we haven't been exposed to it, we don't accept it, we don't think about it. It doesn't mean it's not there.
This could eventually lead to real time travel. What do you imagine if real-time travel, Doctor, were to become possible, not just time control in the field that you've created, but real-time travel? What would be the rules attached to it? Would there be rules? In other words, if I were to travel back into time, would I be able to physically interact in that time in every normal way one can imagine, or would I be not fully in that time? I'm not even sure what I'm asking here.
No, that's fine. It's actually, believe it or not, it's one of the biggest philosophical questions around this type of research that's going on in a lot of different fields.
Because as we leave this time in your time warp field, we see a darker presence to a material object. So one would imagine as you move deeper into time travel, forward or reverse, that there would be shifts that would occur, the kind of shifts you're talking about in time manipulation or time control, that might virtually make you, I don't know, invisible or dysfunctional in another time.
Well, to answer your first question, I think a lot of people are familiar with the physicist Stephen Hawking. He, a number of years back, he published a paper called the Chronology Protection Conjecture. And it was exactly what it sounds like. He said that even if you could be able to go, it was physically impossible for time travel, and if you could go back in time, you could never change anything because somehow the universe will protect its timeline.
Yes.
Now, he since, that was early on in his career, he since repealed that, and he now stands with all the physicists of the world saying that time travel to the past does not violate the laws of physics and mathematics. But it is a question. Is there something that would protect you or prevent you from going back and altering a timeline? I think one of the things that a lot of people see as a first application is viewing through time versus travel through time.
Right.
The ability to go back and view events that happened in the past or events that might be in the future. And that's one way that some...
Yeah, I can imagine that would come before a physical transference.
And a lot of people bring that up, Art, because that's their way of addressing the issue that, if it's the issue of the butterfly's wing. What happens if you went back to the days of the dinosaur and you stepped on a butterfly? Well, that butterfly didn't flap its wings the next minute and create a breeze that created a storm, and the whole history of the Earth was,
That's right,
destroyed.
Yes.
And by only having viewing capability, you could never interact, and therefore
that seems very radical to me. I would think that Occam's razor would suggest that such a small occurrence would not have such a large effect.
Yes.
Wouldn't it? More quickly, in other words, that it would be sort of like a ripple that would dissipate and the current would continue as before?
It's possible. It's possible. I don't know the answer, but I've looked at it from both sides, and I go around in circles every time I get into the discussion. So it's a good point you're raising. That.
Well, when you activate this time warp field, and you're sitting there staring at an object getting darker, moving forward or reverse in time. No, wait a minute. You said darker only in one direction. Which was it?
Yeah. The object. It's when we accelerate the time rate inside the field, so the time rate is moving faster than outside of the field. We actually see a darkening of the object, but that's an optical effect. It's an optical effect of the change in the colors or the frequencies. As a matter of fact, it's very similar for your listeners. It's very similar to a radar gun that a policeman would use. He fires off a frequency, say it's 100 megahertz, hits your car, and when it comes back, it's 100 megahertz plus the speed of your car.
That's right.
And it's a Doppling. It's a Doppling effect. He's seeing a higher
Absolutely.
frequency, and he knows the difference. And that's exactly what happens. Colors are frequencies.
That machine measures the difference and reads out 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour,
yes,
whatever.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're seeing. The Doppling effect in our boundary layer is really just, increasing or decreasing the frequencies of the colors of the object.
Yeah, I know. But when you're sitting there looking at that object, changing in that manner, you are sitting there watching time warp. I mean, what kind of experience psychologically is that? I suppose by now you're used to it, but the first time you saw something like that happen in your experimentation, you must have just been in awe.
I still am, Art. I still am. We have a very interesting setup. We have a mechanical, it's a mechanical a clock that uses metal balls. It's a pure, very simplistic metal clock, but part of the mechanism of the clock are these balls that slide down a tray and then drop through the air into another part of the clock. And what we can actually see as we reduce the time rate inside the field, you can see the balls falling slower. The impression, the effect on people who have seen it, and it's still on myself, is amazing. It's hard to walk down the street and look at the world other than just this amazing place and world of dynamic web of energy and a place where space and time are things that we just are wonderful. Anyway, I'm going off.
Would such travel into the past for a biological entity, were it possible, make that? Would the entity arrive in another time, still aging at the same linear rate, with time moving at the same linear rate, or would that biological organism arrive in the past and be younger?
Well, first off, biologically speaking, like say for instance as we retard time, or you look at the case of rotating cylinders or Tipler cylinders, in that case the biological entity would be sent back into time, and they would remain at the same age, and they would age at a normal rate. The question becomes, if you send somebody back in time, you can send their biological. What about their spirituality? This is a question that gets asked me, and maybe your listeners have some answers because I don't. To send somebody back in time, what does that do to the spiritual aspects of one's mind and person and soul? We don't know the answer to that.
I sure don't either. I have no idea. I think that it would. It might challenge some closely held beliefs, mightn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. What's interesting is this challenging of some of these closely held beliefs began as early as the 1960s. Like I said, you could pick up the phone and call any physicist, any Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and ask them about Tipler cylinders and general relativity and is reverse time travel possible without violating the laws of math and physics? They'll all tell you the same thing, yes, but we choose not to see it. It's absolutely amazing sometimes.
Well, one of the great theoretical physicists that I speak with is Dr. Michio Kaku.
Oh, a wonderful individual.
Many times. I guess you may have heard of him.
Oh, of course. I think everybody knows his books, Hyperspace.
Yeah, sure.
He's done some wonderful work on
co-founder of the string theory.
Absolutely.
So on and on. So he has suggested that, yes, time travel, he believes, may be possible eventually, but the amount of power required.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. That was one of the points I brought up early on in our discussion, is the most exciting thing about our time warp field technology, and the most amazing thing to us is the fact that we've produced these results without the energy that's predicted. Like, for instance, a lot of people say the amount of energy required to tear time and space is something called the Planck's constant.
Yes.
In this case, that's the exciting thing. To a physicist, the exciting thing about our time warp field technology is that we've accomplished it with a significant lower level of power. And
so obviously the goal of the continued research would be to get closer and closer and closer to smaller amounts of power producing larger effects, yes?
Yeah, we're much closer there. And actually, I think that's where a big part of our discovery was. And I think everybody's familiar with electromagnetic waves. As a matter of fact, everybody's sitting in front of a radio right now listening. Some of them are probably on the internet listening to streaming audio, but most of them are probably listening to a radio.
Doctor, hold that thought. I'm sorry. My clock says what it says, and I can't change that, so I've got to take a break here. Hold on. Dr. David Anderson is my guest, and we are talking about time. Don't touch that dial. God, this is fascinating. We are going to go to the phones with Dr. Anderson shortly, but just a few more things. Doctor, you heard what I said coming into this hour. If spirituality and all of this hits the road at the same time.
Yes, I agree. You know, when you mentioned Michio Kaku's work in hyperspace, he even draws some of those ideas that perhaps a lot of spiritual beliefs, a lot of people suffering from multiple personality disorders, schizophrenia, are possibly in tune with other parallel universes.
Yes.
A lot of interesting possible ties there.
Here's a hardware question regarding the field that you have created. If the object, which you have said going forward or reverse, you would begin to see visual detectable changes in the spectrum, right?
That is correct.
Okay. If the object was actually in a slower time and it went back far enough or forward far enough, is it not probable that eventually it would simply disappear from the field?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because what we're seeing again is an optical phenomenon. It just means that it's again similar to the radar gun used by a policeman.
Yes,
that we're seeing an increase of the frequency when we, at the end of, say, we've had that object in the field and we've accelerated it at 300%, say for 2 or 3 hours. When we tune the field, when we modulate the field back down and remove the object is still the same color. It's still the same. There's no different in the material structure of the object or makeup.
But you've changed something in time. In other words,
certainly that object is now aged either more or less than the other objects around it.
But for that to have occurred, it had to actually be in a somewhat physically, it had to be in a different time as well, 2 places at once, or progressively in 2 places at once. I'm not sure of what I'm saying, but I'm closing my eyes and I'm imagining the process.
No, I understand. Sometimes
it all comes back to the nature of time, which we...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if it were to disappear ultimately, then you've got the time travel machine kind of time travel.
That is correct. We have not seen any effect like that. I mean, we've been doing live experiments now for almost 3.5 years, and we haven't seen any phenomena of an object disappearing.
What would you conclude if you did?
If I did? Oh.
In other words, if at some advanced point with a smaller amount of power and a larger effect, an object disappeared, what would you conclude? What would you imagine had occurred to that object?
Oh, wow. We've given this some thought because, as I mentioned before, we have many questions. Sometimes in some areas we have more questions than answers. And matter of fact, you brought this up. One of the other areas that we have, where we have a big question, is we seem to be receiving power inside the time warp field that is not coming from us.
That cannot be accounted for.
Cannot be accounted for. When I say that, we know from our time warp field theory model and the basic models and laws of physics how much energy should be required to maintain our field. When we induce a field and create it, we pull the power back on the laser array to maintain it. However, the amount of energy we're inducing is not enough to maintain the field.
Achieve the effect.
Where's the energy coming from? We know it's there. We have sensor arrays. We can see what energy is active. Is it coming from, I'm being hypothetical now, is it coming from a parallel universe? Is it coming from hyperspace? Is it coming from maybe an effect of quantum gravitation that we don't understand.
This 0-point stuff that people talk about.
Yes, exactly. And we actually have a project called Project Prime Zero that's dedicated totally to trying to understand what we're seeing here. And that energy loss is one of our biggest unknowns right now today.
So then,
it's not a loss of energy; it's an unknown source of energy.
So then, if an object disappeared, you'd be sitting there not knowing whether it really had simply physically moved to another time, or had essentially been dissembled, its molecules scattered to the wind.
Yeah, it's interesting. I realize I didn't answer your question.
That's why I brought it up again.
The answer is, I think more and more. I'm believing. I think I would give a lot of credibility to the idea of it moving into another universe. If I saw this, and again, hypothetically, I have not seen this yet. We have not seen this.
As opposed to another time, another universe, rather than another time, parallel universe.
Yes, because I believe time is really just more of an artificial creation. I think this notion of past, present, and future is, I think we'll find out. It'll become very self-evident that our understanding of what we label time isn't a very good understanding. You know what's interesting, for your listeners who like to do a little bit of research, and you mentioned this issue about, what about all these other phenomena we see, whether it be things in spirituality or multiple personality disorders or schizophrenia.
Well, or even stranger things, Doctor, like an apparition or a ghost or
teleportation.
Something that to us is magic. I mean, if something manifests itself, and believe me, I am in touch with some of the top researchers in the nation, like the Bigelow people. I'm sure you've heard of them, and they've got a ranch, and they've done some really incredibly tight scientific work documenting things that are just simply, absolutely, totally can't be. They're anomalous, and yet they've got documentation of them.
Yes.
Now, mightn't some of these weird things have answers when your work matures?
I think so. I think what we're looking at too, we look at some of these things, like we talk about the telekinesis, the teleportation, all the other things you mentioned, and we keep them separate sometimes from the analytical science. What's interesting is I think sometimes they're complementary. Neither one can be comprehended in the other right now, nor can either of them be reduced to the other. But kind of both of them are necessary, both of them are true, and both of them have a foundation. But I think what what this is leading to is eventually there will be a common bridge and a common scientific model that will tie together a lot of the ideas held within spirituality and this other research like being done by Bigelow and the people sitting there in the quantum physics labs. I think eventually we'll see a new model of the universe that will tie to that. As a matter of fact, there's a gentleman I just met. I was in Europe about 4 weeks ago. A gentleman by the name of Mihai Dragonescu. He works at the Romanian Academy in Bucharest.
Right.
And he has a theory that there's no such thing as matter in space and time. There's only information and energy, and universes are spun off of this, and he has done a tremendous amount of work. And he addresses within his theory not only issues that address with the hard issues of analytical physics and science, but it also transcends into spirituality and teleportation and other things, and it's a single model that bridges all this together. It's fascinating work.
You've heard Kaku talk, haven't you, about the bubble, the theory of a bubble, a universe, a sort of a bubble of, I don't have the right words for it, unfortunately, but an informational kind of thing that you just talked about, in essence, a universe created purely from information.
And energy, yes. Yes, I'm familiar with his work, too. And who else is it? There's another gentleman who's done some work. He did a book called The Conscious Universe, Kafatos. I'm not pronouncing his name properly, but similar work as well. And this is a new Dr. Keku, Kafatos, and Mihai Dragonescu. The three of them are probably three of the people at the leading edge of this new model of the universe.
Whew. All right, there are a lot of people waiting to talk to you, so let's try some questions and see how we do with that. First time caller line, you're on the air with Dr. Anderson. Hi.
Hi, Art. Hi, Dr. Anderson.
Hello.
Yeah, I have a question.
All right, where are you, sir?
Oh, my name's Joshua. I'm from Spring Creek, Nevada.
All right, Joshua, let her rip.
Yeah, inside the field, what effect does gravity have on anything inside the field?
Actually, right now, in terms of gravity, we see no, if you're talking about physical observed gravity with regards to weight and other issues, we don't see any effect, any change whatsoever. What we do see, though, Joshua, is I mentioned to you that, I just mentioned just earlier that we saw there seems to be an unknown source of energy. And what we believe it might be possibly due to is some type of quantum gravity that we don't understand, or some type of, perhaps I'll use the word a little bit differently, microgravity. Obviously, the effects that we're producing within our time warp field are due to, are more in line with the models of general relativity that talks about how mass and gravity can warp space and time. And that's what we're seeing more than anything else. And we believe that there is a gravity effect, but not anything that would be more of a weight issue. It's more of a boundary layer issue.
Okay, one other question. Is there a connection to your research to torsion field research?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Is there a connection between your research and torsion field, spin field?
Oh, torsion?
Yes.
A little bit. I wouldn't say a lot, no. Not at this time.
Okay. So in other words, then, thank you, caller. If a clock, on top of its value as a clock for the kind of research you're doing in that field, were placed on a scale, something I'm sure you've done, you see no difference.
There is no difference. That is correct. But we do believe in the boundary layer that...
Let me think about that.
Yeah, we do believe, though, in the boundary layer that the time rate divergence that we create is due to more general relativistic laws, and we also feel that might have some play in why we're seeing energy within the field that we're not injecting into it.
Okay. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Dr. Anderson. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Got a question for you.
All right. Where are you first?
This is Mark in Gloversville, New York.
All right.
I was wondering, have you attempted to put a small TV inside the field to pick up a live broadcast in the future?
Oh. Mike, it's a wonderful question. The answer is no, we have not, but yeah, it would be interesting to see. Actually,
maybe a little LCD model.
Yeah.
Actually, based on the model, I don't think we would see anything. But you know what? It might be worth talking about with the team here just to try it, just to rule it out as a possibility.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome,
Mike. You. He's got an awfully good point in a way. Theoretically, if the object is moving into the future or moving into the past, its ability to be picking up what's broadcast live should be to some degree compromised, shouldn't it?
Well, actually, this is a real common. I'll call it a little bit of a common misconception. Is that I'm going to go back and use a simpler example. If we look at special relativity, let's talk about the twin, the astronaut who flies off to a distant star and returns. She did not travel into the future. She experienced a accelerated time rate, or a decelerated time rate, I should say, with regards to the person left behind. Mm-hmm. With that said, is that, those types of things, like some people have said, when you slow down time, wouldn't that, another common misconception is that astronaut who's traveling to the distant star, her time rate slows so much, wouldn't that mean that her temperature would slow down and her the temperature would go to absolute zero and she would die? Or the answer is no. I mean, the laws of special relativity and general relativity really wouldn't allow that. But like I said, Mike brings up such a wonderful point. It might be worth a try just to know it is or isn't.
Well, you would be obviously creating such a large field that electromagnetic reception would be compromised anyway, so I don't know if you'd get a good experiment.
Yeah, we would see Dopplering of the electromagnetics coming in and out.
But it is very, very interesting.
In fact, there's probably ways we could take that. Maybe Mike has given us the idea for another new project to put on the board in some way, shape, or form.
You guys on Long Island. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Anderson. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, you're on the air.
This is Scott from Austin, Texas.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Scott.
This is my first contact with Art.
Well, hi there.
And I got everything broken down real simple. can be either expressed in space, atoms, or opinions. That's for you, Art. And I got a question for the doctor.
Yes.
In the EMR radiation spectrum, you got ionizing radiation, which is X-rays, UVs, visual, and non-ionizing radiation, which is radio, microwave, DDTs. And even in the non-ionizing frequency, ELF is 100 hertz frequency down to 10, which will attack and rupture the organic molecules in the human cells.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, what frequency are you testing in?
All right, that's a really good question. Hold the answer, Doctor. In fact, you stay on the line, caller. We've got a break here, but that's a really, really good question. In what frequency range? Now, that may be proprietary. I don't know. We'll find out. But it's a really good question. I know in the case of the Philadelphia experiment, I know what the range was there. So we'll find out here in a moment. I'm Art Bell. And Dr. David Anderson is my guest. He has created something that I had no idea existed. He's actually controlled time. He's doing it now. He's created a time warp field technology. Bet you didn't know about that, did you? Because I sure didn't. I mean, this really is very serious news. And the direction it's headed, well, that may be even more serious. Tell you what, you stay right there and we'll do more. All right, this is really something. Back now to Dr. David Anderson and our caller. And caller, if you would rephrase your question quickly.
Yeah, I was just curious of what frequency range he was tested in.
Well, it's a two-part answer, Scott. As I mentioned, that there are two things that happen with frequency in our experiments. The first one is we do induce a rotational magnetic field, and there's two components to that. The frequency that we use, one of them is just over the 10-meter band, just over the TV band. The other one falls right at about 405 megahertz, which is probably going to fall very close to probably, I don't know, where was the Philadelphia experiment at? Don't tell me it was 405.
Actually, it was 100 and something, 130 or 40 megahertz, I believe, and then later 400 megahertz.
Yeah. What's interesting, as I mentioned before, though, Scott, is that the frequency that we use, or just the fact that we're inducing the rotational electromagnetic field, is important for stability, but it's not a key fundamental thing. The other place where frequency plays a role, as I mentioned, was in the Doppling effect. On whatever we place inside the field and what's outside the field, how it, when it passes through the boundary layer, how it gets Dopplered up or down. Did I answer your question, Scott?
Yeah, well, theoretically, would time travel be able to let you get 8 hours of sleep in 4 hours?
I think that's personally, that's my number one goal. I want to figure out how not to sleep. I always think about the notion that by the time I'm 60 years old, I will have slept for 20 years, and I can't afford that much downtime.
Fewer slices of death.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, keep us up to date.
All right, thank you. All right, I've got one for you. If time travel were possible, I understand this calls for speculation on your part, but I just thought about this. If time travel were possible, and we could go truly into the past, and you did a very safe experiment, and took somebody who had just died, and moved them into the past, would we have in the past a dead body or an animated body?
You would have, my personal belief is a dead body. I'd say the alternative would be to go back before that person died, then pick them up, and then take them into the past to give them more time. But not with. I think what all the relativistic effects that have ever been tested since the 1960s all show that that type of effect wouldn't happen. A dead body taken back would be dead. But if you went back before the death, picked up that person, and took them back, then you would have obviously give them perhaps more time, depending on why they died.
Or moving toward one of your hoped-for applications, you might move back in time and find the person had a weakened artery wall that was about to kill them, and or did kill them in a certain time, and move back and after the autopsy, go back and medically repair that before the horrible accident.
A lot of interesting possibilities. Absolutely right.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. David Anderson. Hello.
Hello, Senator Bell and Dr. Anderson.
Hello.
I called to comment about the relationship of space to time, but may I say one thing before that? I was so happy to hear Dr. Anderson talk about the fact that he thought we exist in a sort of a false reality, because that is exactly what the Ascended Masters teach. They are the higher spiritual beings. They say we do live in a false reality, and they say in reality there really is no space or time. But with that said, speaking of space and time, a long time ago, many years ago, it occurred to me that space has some kind of a relationship to time. And it seems that I've proved it to myself over the years. If I live in very close, very small quarters with a lot of things around me, especially if they're not kept in a good order, etc., I find I'm very, very limited in my time. Then when I have more space and larger quarters, and if I don't have so many material things around me, I seem to have very, very much more time. And I think that probably affects everybody that way, and they haven't realized it.
Is there that relationship, Doctor?
I don't know. This is probably something I'm not qualified to comment on. When I speak of space and time, I'm looking at it more. I have to apologize to your caller, because I think I've spent too much time in the world of pure analytical science. But I don't discount what she's saying.
Yes, well, I'm certainly enjoying your program very much.
All right. Thank you very much for the call. I think I understand what she's saying, but I understand also why you would not have an answer for that. But it's interesting. Hi there. First-time caller line. You're on the air with Dr. David Anderson.
Hi, Art. This is Jason in Olympia, Washington.
Jason, you're going to have to yell at us a little. You're not too loud.
Okay. Hi, Art. My question for Dr. Anderson is, with your time alteration experiments, have you ever attempted these experiments with the clock mechanism shielded in like a metal ball, something that would completely isolate it from the electromagnetic field that you're generating, but still placing it within the boundary layer? And would you have any measurable time dilation effects under those conditions?
The answer to that question is absolutely yes. We have. We've used a number of different materials with a lot of different, I guess I'll say, characteristics with different permeability and permittivity, from metals to synthetics and other things, and we have seen no effect as a result of having a clock inside a shield, which was interesting to us. We weren't sure exactly what to expect. When we finally got the field size larger, we were able to run those experiments, and we have not seen any detriment to having everything within the shell of the boundary layer is affected to the time rate divergence.
So in other words, the shield and the clock itself would be equally affected.
That is correct.
Caller?
Yeah, that makes good sense if it's a gravitational effect.
Sure does.
The other one that I would ask is if you have a light source outside of the transition region and it reflects, or it passes through the boundary region, reflects off of the object and then comes back out, the Doppler shift through the transition should be linear in both directions. Is there any polarization effects? You mentioned a darkening, but is there any other blurring effects or things of that nature in light that bounces off of the object?
Well, this conversation gets a little complicated because when the object we put inside the field has a light source, and many times we do that, we put a light source within the field with the object and the reference equipment that we're using. That light source and the light that it's reflecting off the object and out is Dopplered out. Going into the field, what's interesting, you talk about light sources. If you think about this for a minute, we have a laser array of 12 lasers firing into this field. And when the Doppler rate is accelerated, when the frequency is accelerated as light passes into the field, we have exactly what you say. And we really haven't looked at like for instance the laser ambient light, as it goes into the field coming out, and any polarization effects, it really hasn't been an issue.
Well, that would be coherent light, so it should be pretty easy to notice any effects that would cause. Yeah. I was just wondering if it might be like a blurring effect, like heat distortion, like you'd see on a desert road. The only reason I really ask that is that over the years there's been a number of photographs taken of UFOs, and a lot of these photographs, some of them are blurry, and I mean a lot of it you could write off to just bad camera work. But if some of these blurring effects was like a Faraday rotation or some sort of magnetic dichloric response, then maybe there's a parallel between some sort of UFO propulsion mechanism and what you're working with.
Doctor?
Well, we see some when you talk about the blurring, and this is going to be different. I'm not necessarily saying what you're saying supports what we're seeing here, but the boundary layer is not. I mean, it's not a purely linear and stable at every range where we experiment and test. When we have a light source inside the field and we're looking at an object, there is some blurring, but I don't think it would be similar to the same effect that you're bringing up.
So are you then constantly striving to stabilize the field?
The field is very stable, from accelerating to 300% and slowing down time rates down to about 15. But here's the issue. What we really want to do is, and we've done it, we've gone down to a 0 time rate and tried to approach a negative time rate with inside the field.
Right.
And as we do that, though, as we get to 10% of the reference time rate, which again is the rate at which time passes outside of the field, we have an instability where the boundary layer starts not collapsing, but it enlarges or shrinks to the core of the field. And that's a problem. If we ever want to be able to regress disease, we have to solve that problem.
All right. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Dr. Anderson. Hello.
Yeah, your anomalous power source is probably coming from a different time of your experiment.
It could be. It could be. I have absolutely on that unexplained power that we're seeing. We know it's there. Either, put it this way, we know a couple things. We either know that again, what we're seeing is when we create a field, the power we're providing isn't enough to keep it open. So we either have equipment that's in error, which we've ruled out, or the laws of physics are wrong, which we don't think they are, or there's a power source coming from within the field, and you're very well right. Maybe it's coming from the power that we're injecting at other times into the field ourselves and not from another universe. Who knows?
We measure speed of light by...
Hello?
Yes.
What happened to him? I guess he went away. Oh, well, we lost him. Doctor, have you ever, in a wild moment, wondered, sitting in the lab, whether one day you might, get a knock at the door, and there is an old, gray Dr. Anderson saying, "You want a quantum leap?"
I've wondered. I think one of my personality flaws and personality strengths is I'm a little too focused on my work. I live for my work, probably 12, 16 hours a day. So
I understand.
I don't give a lot of thought to it, but at times it does cross the mind. And the other question, maybe I can anticipate. A lot of people say, if you ever do expand the technology and to a point a human can step inside and go anywhere, where would you go in time? And I don't know the answer to that one either.
Is there any reason why that couldn't happen that you can imagine? In other words, as we imagine the power that you can't account for, perhaps coming from other experiments you have performed in the same rough place a year or 2 years or 10 years from now, then we might also imagine the possibility of, in other words, could it happen? Could you come back providing yourself a quantum leap in technology, or would that be disallowed with what we understand or think we might know about the nature of time?
I do not think. I hold firmly my ground, and I think if you put the top 20 physicists in the room, 19 or 20 of them would agree is that it is not precluded. I mean,
not precluded.
It is not precluded that a person could travel back into time. It may be incredibly difficult. It may be incredibly difficult to achieve, either due to power or a lot more work to do on technology, but it is not impossible. It does not violate the law.
Well, then, how about this one? If time travel is to be possible, no matter when that might be, the big question is then where be all the time travelers?
That's a good question. It's a good question. That's the one that's used to. That's the one Stephen Hawking uses in his chronology protection conjecture that we talked about earlier. He says his rationale for belief that there is time travel is impossible because we're not overwhelmed with time travel. One of the most common views is that, and Frank Tipler holds to this, is that when the first time machine that a human is built, he won't be able to go back any further than the day in time that the time machine was first constructed. And I don't believe that. Who knows? Perhaps it's explained through some of the theories of parallel universes and hyperspace. Another one is, the parallel universe theory that says if you go back and alter the timeline, the original timeline continues, but a parallel timeline branches off. Perhaps that is an explanation. I'm not sure I agree, but perhaps it is.
So that you would change an event, and events would continue in that timeline based on that change, on a totally kind of like on a separate highway, but the original highway would continue on as unchanged. Is that correct?
Exactly. So at any point in time, there are literally an unlimited or an infinite number of parallel universes all progressing at the same time.
Wouldn't we vastly complicate that with time travel? We would begin to cause all these branches.
It's possible, and you brought up that issue before. Are there dangers to the technology? Who knows? Maybe that could be one of the points.
Do you, with your team, spend much time talking about these dangers?
We talk about many things.
What are your worries?
Our biggest worries is to resist the temptation to try to test on a living person or animal too quickly. Because we want to make this leap. We want to get.
But what's a mouse? What's a mouse more or less?
What's that?
What's a mouse more or less?
It depends. It depends on the individual you're asking the question to. It really does.
I'm asking you.
You're asking me.
A mouse more or less. In other words, how can you resist that temptation?
I believe that that the use of animals for testing, provided it is for a greater good, be it for animals or people or otherwise, is good. I mean, reckless use of animals for scientific testing is something that just isn't very politically.
You're pretty sensitive to the issue.
Yeah, very sensitive to the issue. The biggest reason why I'm sensitive to it, Art, is I don't have strong feelings along that line, but what I don't want to see is our research and advancing our research to become a political movement or issue. And if we try to test on living animals too quickly and we had a mishap, it could really affect us politically, and it really could literally affect our real research.
Have you read Creighton's latest book?
What's the name?
I'm trying to remember the name of it myself now. I just read it.
You know what? I think I have it sitting here. And it's... I should know that.
My wife is yelling it from the other room, and I can't hear it. She'll come in here and tell me in a second. It's important.
Oh, Timeline.
Timeline, thank you.
The answer is I have the audio tapes, and the plastic is still wrapped around them, so
I
have not.
In Timeline, they achieve time travel, but one of the very difficult side effects of it turn out to be something called transcription errors. In other words, some of the people who are incorrectly sent through time and return end up, for example, they do an MRI on the person, and a blood vessel that should be connected in an ongoing stream, as blood vessels are, suddenly is disjointed by a quarter of an inch or an eighth of an inch, and with obvious horrible effects. Transcription errors they talk about.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly, and I think the whole team here is really less sensitive to that. Again, in the case of relativity theory and its application, anything that's experiencing a relativistic effect, provided it's not caught in, let's call it, like a boundary layer, you're not going to have that type of problem. I think teleportation, that's always a big issue.
I know IBM is working on that.
Yeah, and that's a huge issue. As a matter of fact, there's a really interesting article in Scientific American about quantum teleportation this month, and it talks about this as a possible risk. I think the biggest question we have that we can't seem to get our arms around is, and it's not critical to our research right now, but we want an answer, is if we send an object back into time and we slow time rates and we accelerate time rates and we're moving these objects forward,
right?
And when we expand this to include a living animal or person, we don't see a risk of transcription errors, Art, but what we see is an unanswered question, and that question is, if we move a poor person forward into time or backward into time someday, does their soul go with them?
Oh, God.
Yeah. And that's a question that is one I'm not even ready to try to answer.
I'm with you. Oh, boy, am I with you. Listen, I have one more hour. Can you afford one more hour?
I will make it happen, yes.
All right, let's make it happen then. Shall we?
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better.
Maybe with this technology, we won't have quite the same weight. That occur to anybody out there? I'm Art Bell. All right, Dr. Anderson, welcome back.
Thank you.
You said of something very interesting. You said that if you were to move a biological entity, a person, you might move the physical person, but not the soul. And that was a concern, right?
That's a question we ask ourselves, yes.
When in the other room, and I asked my wife that, if she heard that, she said, oh, yes. She said, well, maybe the soul is just excess baggage, and you'd pick up another one when you get there.
Maybe a better one. I don't know.
Maybe souls are automatically installed in bodies wherever they may be, the same or another one. Who knows? Interesting. All right. Anyway, listen. Here's somebody who wants to know how much power reduction to achieve the results you're getting are you achieving compared to the theory of what it should be? In other words, how much percentage-wise, how much power are we talking about here? Can you tell us?
Yeah, it's substantial. It's when we do our estimates, the amount of power we're injecting into the field is only, I'm going to say roughly, depending on the specific experiment, but it's roughly about 70%. So it's substantial.
Has that remained relative? My God, 70%. Has that remained relatively constant, or has that changed?
Depending on where we're at in terms of accelerating, where we are in terms of what time rate we're trying to accelerate or decelerate to, it varies slightly. But on average, it's right around 70%. But there is a variance, to answer your question, Jeff.
Boy, that's astoundingly large, and I guess that's got you thinking about all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah, the question is, is this energy coming from hyperspace, from a parallel dimension? Is it... we still ask the question is maybe are the laws of physics wrong? We don't like to think they are, and we don't think they are, but
they might be.
Another area where we have more questions than we have answers, but we are working on that one very specifically.
All right, how about this? Please ask Dr. Anderson from John in Auburn, Alabama, if he knows about the Einstein Gravity Probe B, a spacecraft designed to test how the Earth's mass warps space-time. Seems to me this $70 million over-budget project by NASA is attempting to test something that has already been proven.
What was his name again?
John.
John. Actually, it's interesting because I believe John wrote me an email earlier today.
All right, well, he's not quite done. The Einstein probe is anticipated to provide new and stringent tests of some of the predictions of general relativity. In particular, the spacecraft is designed to test for frame dragging by the Earth as it rotates in space.
Yes, I know. That's why I have to say this is where I get sometimes a little frustrated on where we spend money. The concept of frame dragging is something that
old news
is old news. Yes, and I'm very familiar with what they're doing with the probe. They are trying to measure the effects of frame dragging of the Earth and the Moon. And you know what? In a way, I'm kind of happy they're doing it, but for the amount of money that's gone into this project, I think there's other places it could have been better spent.
If deceased spirits are in fact existent at a higher or faster frequency, could they potentially be seen by placing a camera inside your field and speeding up time inside the field? I know that's a wild...
No, I have to think about that question before I answer it. If you put a camera inside the field, and so we're Doppling images...
and you're looking outward.
The answer is there are other ways to do that. You don't need a time warp field to do that. There are ways that there are cameras that will, for instance, look at X-rays, ultraviolet light, visible light, and then you could take that information and you could digitally bring it down. And there's actually a lot of systems out there that do that today. And believe it or not, I actually think in a lot of paranormal experiments, they actually use equipment like that today. So the answer is yes, you could use a time warp field, but it would be overkill.
It would be overkill. Still, though, it might prove conclusively we're always after this, chasing this life after death thing, and whether there are really, whether there is an existence after death. And I'm not sure it would prove that, but if you saw entities of a different sort, you would indeed be proving that there is an existence at a faster or higher frequency that we simply cannot perceive presently. You would prove that, maybe in an overkill way, but...
It's interesting because when you talk about some of your professional acquaintances who are studying the ability of the human mind as a time machine, what's interesting is we know that from special relativity from Einstein that a body that approaches or travels near the speed of light essentially transcends time. The future becomes the past and time dilates, and you see all that effect. You also look at it, though, and you say, well, let's look at the human mind. How does it work? The human mind is a energy-mediated process. It works off of energy that travels very near the speed of light. Is it possible that the human mind is a time machine? But even more importantly, what you brought up, Art, what happens in death? What happens to the energy in the human mind? And the energy is released. Does that energy stay? Does it dematerialize? Or when an object dematerializes and you die, does that mean you move into a plane of different energy? There's a whole bunch of theories out there that we get hit with every now and then and we're not experts on, but interesting.
Or different frequency. I mentioned to you Bob Bigelow, and he's got a ranch at a place that I don't talk about. It's I'm sure you've heard about it. And somebody observed using night vision equipment the oddest thing. One of the scientists there actually saw a kind of a hole form, defined. It was defined by light, by a circle of light, and saw a creature or a thing or something come through, and then saw that disappear.
Well, you asked me the question just before the break about, and I'll tell you, I'm not going to say that this is my view, but there's some very interesting ties. A lot of people ask us the question after our technical presentations, well, where are all the time travelers?
That's right.
If technology is created, well, so how come nobody hasn't seen any? Well, the answer is, some people say perhaps. What about the tens of millions of people who've claimed they've seen extraterrestrial visitors?
Absolutely.
Is it possible that they're time travelers from our future?
Absolutely. It certainly is.
And it opens up a whole fascinating area of discussion.
All right, going back to the phones in a second, but here's another really good one. Stephen says, may have missed it earlier, but what happens to objects that enter or leave the time warp field or pass through the boundary layer while the apparatus is turned on? For example, what would happen if you fired a shot from a gun of some kind into the field?
Well, that shot, obviously, the time rate slows down, and you would see the physical effects of that. Again, remember the window that we're working in. We've accelerated time rates in the field to 300%, and we've decelerated it down to about, successfully down to about 13%. And you will see, when you put a material object through the field, you'll see the physical effects of it as if it was, moving faster through time. If you put a living object through the boundary layer, it would be a very bad thing. As a matter of fact, when we start our experiments, we always initiate the field and then put the object in the field before we adjust the time rate divergence, because it's just too dangerous.
We were talking earlier about transcription errors. Now, if you were to put a living object through the field, an operational field, is that the horrid result that you might get?
Well, it depends on how high we have the time rate divergence tuned. Here's what happens. Say I was to take my hand and I was to place it inside the field. Why it was modulated so there was a time rate divergence. So say that the time was let me think about the time was greatly accelerated in the field. The heat within my hand would be Dopplered up to higher heat, higher energy, which would essentially, depending on where we were, either have a mild effect or have the effect of destroying the living tissue in my hand.
That's going to be a problem for a while.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is we can put objects in the field. We just don't pass them through the boundary layer once the time rate divergence is set up.
Gotcha. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Anderson. Hello.
Yes, good morning. I had several quick questions here. You talk about your experiment using lasers, a gas, and a rotating electromagnetic field. Those are basically three things. Is that right?
That is correct.
Well, can you explain on a very simple model level, like take a single atom? What do those three things do to the protons, neutrons, and electrons to like a single atom? Does the effect happen totally outside of the atom, like the space around the atom, like maybe the 0-point field or some other field of energy, a sea of energy around us?
I think it's the latter. I think it's the same example, and I always fall back to it because it's an easier example, the twin paradox. That twin traveling in a high-speed spaceship is experiencing a relativistic effect within the object that is traveling at that high speed. And it's the same within our time warp field. Anything within that boundary layer is seeing a relativistic effect.
Can you explain?
And it's more of a relativistic effect than a quantum effect.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain what the three components do to the space? I mean, theoretically around or inside the field. What do the lasers and the gas and the rotating electromagnetic field actually do theoretically to the space around or to the sea of energy around the object?
Well, I can do it briefly. This could get to be very, very technical, but the gaseous reagent is used in conjunction with the lasers to create the amount of energy that we need to induce the field. We learned very quickly that using a rotational magnetic field, it kept it a little more stable and predictable. So once we initiate the field, that's the operation between the two. The gaseous reagent is injected through what we call our injector sensor arrays. It's injected once the field is initiated. The injectors don't fire after that. It's just really the lasers that are used to maintain and modulate the field, but the power on the lasers comes down significantly after it started.
So it's really moving. What you started, but it continues, and you're simply modulating it with the lasers, or sustaining it to some degree with the lasers, but not the majority of the power.
That is correct, yes.
Sir, could you tell me, have you heard of Dr. Thomas Van Flanderen's work? I've recently read an article in Infinite Energy magazine where he talks about basically the speed of gravity seems to be infinite, and the article was very, I could almost really understand it without getting into the technical details of what he was talking about, but it really made a lot of sense. And how the gravity might be connected with this, and Townsend T. Brown and his work with capacitors. Is there anything to do with capacitance with your experiment?
I don't honestly believe there's anything to do with capacitance, and I'm familiar with a lot of the models that you might be referring to. With regards to what Dr. Flanders is doing and saying in gravity tied, I believe that what we're seeing in our boundary layer is a more of a general relativistic effect than anything else, which means it's dealing with gravity.
To me, it's
dealing with either quantum gravity or microgravity, but it's dealing with gravity.
To me, it's a fantastic idea that everything is connected on a non-local basis, and the whole point about Van Flanderen's work that gravity seems to be instantaneous. Like if you shove a board in one end, it moves instantaneously on the other end. What do you think that says about the universe and reality itself?
That one word is, I can tell that you're very familiar with the subject, that one word, non-local.
Yes.
This is a major revelation in the last 4 years that the bottom line is It's been theorized, but now it's been proven that every particle in the universe, or a particle on one end of the universe, if touched, the effect could be felt at another particle instantaneously on the other side of the universe, even if it meant the distance was require faster than light travel.
Have you heard about a book titled The Holographic Universe, and how the idea that the universe, basically, you can cut a hologram picture into infinite number of little pieces, and each little piece would still have that same image on it, and it basically says that in every point in the universe, you can keep breaking it down, and every little segment of the universe has all the time, all the knowledge that's ever happened and ever will happen in every single space. It's almost like, to me, it's almost like they're grasping at the point where it seems like they're discovering God almost, because I happen to believe that there is a God, but I think there's a personality behind it, that it's force. And it's almost like the universe is like a mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That was Michael Talbot's
Yes,
book.
that's his name, yes.
The holographic universe, yeah. What's interesting is, when you look at it, like the Elaine aspect experiments that came out of France that showed that this connection, a faster-than-light connection between information and energy in the universe truly does exist. Think about it, though. Look at the Navajo Indians, and look at some of the Buddhists and Taoists who've been preaching this for 2,000 years. Are we simply rediscovering ancient wisdom?
Yes.
Are we just get stupid, and all of a sudden we're finally starting to get a little more informed and knowledgeable, or are we really seeing something different?
I just recently read an article that talked about how there's these microtubules in the brain, in every cell, in the neurons, and these are crystalline protein structures, and the basic theory is that these things more or less surf along or on top of the field of energy that's all around us, this God consciousness, and that they're almost discovering how maybe man and God can be connected in the physical realm via the mind, and maybe perhaps these things are in a whole body. But it's really amazing, some of the things I've been reading lately. Absolutely amazing. And I love Art Bell's show. I hope it continues just like this.
And if I could ask you a favor, the last thing you mentioned about the tubular structures, if there's any way you could email me some information. I know a few people here, including myself, who would really love to study that a little bit further.
Well, how would you feel about giving out an email address, Doctor?
Myself, absolutely. My email address is very simple. It's D as in David, D Anderson, at time-travel.com.
Okay, I got that.
D. Anderson at time-travel, and that's a middle dash, travel.com.
That is correct.
Okay, got it.
God bless you, Art. I hope you do well.
Thank you, and take care. Here's a question that I'm not sure I should answer or ask you, because I'm not sure if it's a proper question, but it's from JT in Dallas. Hey, Art, I'm dying to know the answer to this question. If you were to put a transformer or varostat into this machine or field with a constant current going in, and then have the output coming outside of the field, as you speed up or slow down time, would the voltage change? In other words, if you increase time, does the voltage or amperage increase accordingly? And imagine turning a milliwatt into a 110-volt house current instantly. Mind-boggling.
Yes, but there's still, the answer is yes, you do, but when you make that circuit, you're making a loop, and the conservation of energy does apply in that specific model. I'm not saying it applies everywhere, but again, if he makes that circuit from a transformer inside the field, running out, looping out, it has to loop back in to close the circuit, and so you see the effect of the Doppling effect, leaving the field and coming back in, or vice versa.
Okay. Hold it right there, Doctor. We are once again forced, as networks are, to conform to time constraints. Now, maybe we could change that in the future, and boy, that sure would rearrange my brakes, wouldn't it? I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM. All right, once again, Dr. David Anderson. Doctor, this non-local effect that you were discussing a few moments ago, which suggests, I guess, that if something happens to a molecule here 30 light years away, a molecule would be affected in a similar way instantly, virtually instantly. Is that correct?
It's a good summary. It's relatively recently. It began with an experiment called the aspect experiments in Paris, France. It's the first scientific experiment that suggests through scientific evidence, hard scientific evidence, that the universe truly is a dynamic web of energy that's inseparable, all connected, and everything that communicates faster than the speed of light, which is a very interesting concept.
All right. I have heard a number of people describe the only possibility for travel faster than light, or virtually instant travel, would be, I've had it described to me this way. You take a piece of paper, just a long piece of paper, and you imagine a little ant trying to get from one end of the paper to the other, and the little ant would take quite a while to get from one end to the other. On the other hand, if you fold the paper in half, then the ant just crawls over the edge and virtually has arrived from point A to B instantly. But that's not quite what we're talking about, is it?
Well, it's close. It's the illustration called a Mobius strip that's used to demonstrate curved space-time. If you want to travel to a distant point in the universe, there's two things you can do. You can travel in a straight line at very high speed, or you could warp space and time to curve it around, so you just have to take a short hop. It's a little bit different than what we're talking about, yes. But it's a very fundamental concept in space-time physics, yes.
Okay, one other question. This enormous reduction in energy once the field has begun, that you've documented so well, wouldn't there be a way to simply maintain the field and tap the energy?
You know, it's interesting. We wonder, after we address some of these other issues, is it going to be possible that what we're looking at might be a source of power?
Exactly.
A source of power that might be clean and efficient.
Exactly.
And non-polluting. Right now, we don't know the answer to that question, but it's certainly something that we are very interested in pursuing as our research continues.
It's an obviously very important question, considering that at present rates of usage, all the fossil fuels will be gone in another 40, 45 years, whatever.
Well, you know what's interesting, Art, is the whole team here is we have a few passions. One of our passions is the application of our time warp field technology in the medical application. The other two passions we have are to explore the use of the boundary layer characteristics as a power source. The other one is we would like to explore the possibility of the technology for supercomputer applications, basically meaning let's put a supercomputer inside an accelerated time warp field and have it process faster. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately we can't get funding for the latter two. We'll have to keep waiting to advance those.
Have you kept yourself poor funding a lot of this yourself?
Initially, I have to admit, initially opening the center in the first year and a half, 2 years of the center was very difficult. Now it's things are running smoothly, and we're to the point where we can be very selective about which private and public contracts that we take.
Isn't that nice?
It is good. We paid our dues, though.
I hear that. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Yeah, good morning, Art.
Good morning.
Once again, you've done a show that only you can do, I think, and I'm sorry to hear that you won't be here very much longer for us, but I'm sure you'll do the best you can to not hurt us as far as the quality of your excellent program.
Thank you.
A question for you, Dr. Anderson. I'm one of those poorly educated persons that does have a scientific curiosity, and I've been recently, the last 3 years or so, indulging myself in scaring the hell out of my cat and neighbors with doing some capacitive discharge and microwave RF plasma generation experiments. And I'm fairly familiar with the anomalous energy effects that happen when you get down to using high energy fields or having high energy events. I was just wondering, one question, if you can answer it or not, is your field generator an extension of the work done by William Hooper? If you're familiar with him, he did work on what he called the rotational field generators. He did a mechanical one that had coils and magnets. He also did an all-electric one that was just like a specially wound coil.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with his work, not completely, but again, what I'd say is that no. The answer to your question is no. It's not based on his work, and maybe even more importantly, the rotational magnetic field we induce, we believe at least, and then again from the number of callers that are asking the question, I'm beginning to wonder, but we believe that it's important, but mostly for a stability issue, and it's not at the core of what we're using to create technology.
It's a container relic, pretty much so. Another question I had, and I know this is getting into the area of epistemology actually, because I think a lot of the problems I have, and maybe other listeners as well have, with understanding a lot of the concepts being discussed is that we have Newtonian definitions for quantum answers that we're getting to the questions that we have, such as like time travel, and to me, to my understanding, I don't see how people can separate the space component of the continuum when they talk about time travel. For instance, Art asked, is there anything that you've speculated that may be an insurmountable obstacle as far as the future possibility of actual transporting something or an entity or a living person through time to the past or to the future? And the problem that I see with that is that what is going to be your reference point? I mean, for example, if you were to actually send something physically back in time just 1 hour ago, you'd also have to move it through the spatial component of the space-time continuum to have it re-exist or instantaneously exist on the same place on the Earth. Like the Earth is rotating 1,000 miles an hour on its axis, it's got its orbital velocity, and then the entire galaxy is rotating, and then the local local cluster is moving towards Virgo supercluster at a million miles.
We've got the idea. So you'd end up hanging out somewhere.
Right. 1 hour of time. To go back and out 1 hour in time, you'd also have to travel many, many miles on a very difficult to calculate path, I would think.
Doctor? There's two different ways to answer to respond to that question. Actually, there were a couple questions in there. The first one is, if you were talking about a special relativistic effect, the answer is yes. When you traveled forward into time or you returned, you would obviously be at a reference point in the universe where the Earth no longer is because it's moving and spinning and so on.
Right.
When you look at general relativistic effects, we're not talking about speed and motion. We're talking about exposure to gravity. And we're talking about motion that doesn't have to be linear, long, straight line flights at extremely high speeds. So there is a subtle difference. One of the things is obviously that you bring up one point that we look at, and we haven't got there yet. But we see, obviously, once we expand this time control capability, and let's call it someday we do have a time machine. It's not a time machine. It's also a space travel machine. And then those types of issues become, a question. But right now our focus is, I think, as Art put it, we're walking before we run.
Space travel, or more aptly, perhaps transporter?
I think I would probably use both words could be applied, but if I was going to be real picky, I'd probably say space travel.
Okay.
Extremely high-speed space travel.
All right. And here's one more for me to throw your way. You'll tangle with this when you get to that book Timeline, or the audio book. They suggest the informational avenue is really the answer, and the answer to time travel ultimately will be a quantum computer.
It's a good point. And is the human mind a quantum computer?
Oh, probably.
Is even a better question. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure if I would necessarily agree with that. I do, like I said, I've spent way too much time living in the world of math and physics and analytical science, so it's hard for me to talk about some of the other questions. But I firmly believe, with my little bit of experience in the more of the metaphysical side and the studying of the human mind, that we will see achievement of time travel and other types of capability in the human mind, using the human mind. At the same time, we're seeing more hardware, scientific vehicles.
Well, yeah, I see the way you're moving, but I mean, if the theory that the universe is an informational construct would be accurate, then perhaps a quantum computer could move around in it very easily.
It's possible. It's very possible. It might open up new avenues, and I know there's research going on, but I'm not sure. I'm not much more familiar with it than that. I apologize, Art.
Oh, that's all right. First-time caller line. You're on the air with Dr. Anderson. Hi.
Hi, how you guys doing today?
Okay, sir.
I'm wondering if you can hear me all right. I'm on one of those crappy digital phones here, so I apologize for the audio quality.
Giant step backward for mankind.
Yes, believe me, it might save on the battery, but every time I make a phone call, people are always like, you got throat cancer or something, so, I do apologize in advance. Dr. Anderson, you mentioned way a couple hours ago, which is why I called you, that you were mentioning somebody who, Dr. Mihai Draganescu, and I was wondering if you could give me a little more information, because I'm actually going to be in Bucharest on Sunday.
Oh, wow. Absolutely. I'm trying to think the best way to do this. Do you have access to email?
Yeah, I sure do.
Okay, why don't you email me at D. Anderson.
Okay.
D. Anderson
Yeah, I got the email from before, D. Anderson at Time-Travel, whatever.
Shoot me an email, and I'll give you his name. His name, again, is Mihai Draganescu.
Yeah, Draganescu. I was just wondering if maybe, like where he worked or how I could get a hold of just go and see what he's up to, that kind of thing. Cause
if you're in Bucharest.
Out of the blue, it just surprised me because I'm actually going to be there in just a couple of days. So I was just wondering what you were doing there.
A little bit of research. There's a gentleman that I'm working with who's an expert in chaos theory there. I also met with Mr. Draganescu to talk with him about some of his work and some other projects.
Well, that sounds good. The other question I had, which you basically already answered, was about how everybody here is focusing on the time and the travel and all that kind of stuff. But when I was sitting there and you mentioned that you were getting more energy than you expected, in other words, you're getting more energy than you were putting in, I had to say, isn't that sort of like the foundation of a perpetual, energy machine or something, just because you're getting more out than you were putting in?
Well, I don't know if that's exactly fair to say that he was getting more out than putting in, but more was available to sustain the field. Now, can that be tapped and used?
That's one of the questions that we've been unable to obtain funding on right now to pursue, but you said it well, Art, is that when we initiate the field, the amount of the energy we're applying is less than what we should have to apply to keep it open. So there's like I said earlier, I think either there's an energy source that is providing that missing energy to maintain the field the way the laws of physics say it must be maintained, or the laws of physics are wrong. And I vote for the former.
But it could be the latter, which will really cause a tangle.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Dr. Anderson. Good morning.
Yes. Do I understand correctly that when you have the field in the slowdown mode, that light going in would be blue shifted, red shifted, and light coming out is blue shifted?
Good question.
Yeah. The way it works is if the time rate is accelerated inside the time warp field, the light moving out is the frequency is lowered, whereas light coming in is increased. And if the time rate inside the field is decelerated, lower than the reference time rate outside of the field, it's obviously opposite.
Yes. Well, all this reminds me, for some reason, of descriptions of what's supposed to happen on a spaceship traveling close to the speed of light.
Yeah, actually, he's right. That is very similar to what has been theorized would occur, isn't it, Doctor?
Yeah, it is. There is a subtle difference. In the case of an object traveling fast, you will see red and blue shift, and you see red and blue shift from light emanating from stars, and we use that to try to determine speed and relative position of distant stars, and that's a common thing done in astrophysics. The fact that an object traveling fast near the speed of light really doesn't have as much bearing on that red shift, blue shift. The fact that it's moving, and if you were to bounce a signal off it, or if it was to emanate a signal, then yes, that signal would be red shifted or blue shifted. but it's not necessarily that speed that's required to dilate the time. Again, within the time warp field, we're seeing more of a general relativistic effect based on some characteristic of gravity.
You have given us such a great gift by being here this morning, and all I've given you back is a bunch of emails so far. Do you have anything at all you would like to plug? Do you have a book? Have you written a book? Is there anything I can do for you here?
Well, I appreciate that. Actually, it's a real pleasure to be with you, Art, and as many other viewers have said, I wish you tremendous amounts of success and good health and happiness in whatever you decide to pursue.
Thank you.
The only thing I could say is, a lot of people ask me when I speak about our research why they should believe a word I say and why they should believe a word that anybody says about space and time. And the answer is, I always give, is they shouldn't. Keep an open mind, study. If one of the best things, if I can put in a plug, is we sponsor, as part of one of our side efforts, an organization called the Time Travel Research Association. It offers a free membership. It has a simple goal. It networks thousands of people from multiple countries around the world with a single goal to advance the study and development of time and time travel. And it doesn't matter whether it's from a perspective of spirituality, mathematics, physics, metaphysics, art, poetry. If it has to do with time and time travel, this is a wonderful association, and you can really meet and network with a lot of really talented people. And again, that's something that comes from our heart. We really just want to make this information available and free for everybody to study, and it's available and free on our website at www.time-travel.com.
And we've got a link up. And I imagine, how's your site doing this morning? Have you had an opportunity to check, by the way?
No, not while I've been on the phone, but I imagine there have been quite a few hits.
I think it's probably going to be very, very busy. Are you a fan of time travel movies?
Well, let me answer that question in an interesting way. The answer is yes. We actually have a space-time, well, I won't call it library, it's our archive here. We now have more than 10,000 items we've collected that cover from science fiction movies, books, manuscripts, clocks, anything that has to do with the study of time and time travel, and even more so, our video collection. I won't say it's the largest in the world, but we probably got about 500 or 600 time travel movies in our archive.
Wow!
And from different countries as well as the U.S. And one of our big hopes is that early next year we're going to open up a space-time museum out here on Long Island dedicated to the sharing of that information.
Whew. You really are undertaking an awful lot of projects at once, aren't you? You're a very busy person.
Yeah, but like you, I work, and then when my body mandates it, I sleep and eat, and then I get back to work again. So,
well, maybe if your work is productive, you can cut down on that sleep time.
I like that idea. I'll put myself inside the time warp field and accelerate my research. It would be wonderful.
All right, let's see. One more time, your email address, if you wouldn't mind.
The email address again is D as in David, D. Anderson at time-travel.com. Again, D. Anderson at time-travel.com.
I may come knocking on your door again pretty soon, Doctor.
It would be a pleasure.
All right. Then, in that case, thank you, my friend, for being here. What a night. Get some sleep.
Actually, I'm going to go back to work for a few hours and then get some sleep.
Oh, boy. All right. Good night, Doctor.
Best regards. Good night.
Well, that definitely goes down as the premier time travel show that we've ever done. No question about it. You're talking to the man who has already controlled time. He's done it in his lab on Long Island. It's a reality. Now, I know it's going to take a while for all of that to sink in, for me too, what's actually happened back there. But if we haven't made news tonight, then you haven't been listening. From the high desert, I'm Art Bell. Good night.
Richard Hoagland, Richard, who was a one-time advisor to NASA, to Walter Cronkite, during the really exciting space years, won the Angstrom Science Award. He's on to this thing about Mission to Mars, the $120 million movie that is going to be released tomorrow that we've been discussing. And I've had so much input, and so has Richard. There is a raging controversy about what's going on with this movie. Now, I have some of my own thoughts on the matter after receiving a lot of messages from those of you who have seen the movie already, but we'll get to that after a while. Let me first destroy all the bandwidth of my website. We have the trailer. We have the audio of the trailer, thanks to David Gianmarco, who you'll hear shortly. If you go to my website and you scroll down to tonight's guests, Richard Hoagland and David Gianmarco, before Georgia Durante later, you will see under related information, just click on Mission to Mars trailer, and by God, there it is. A NASA cover-up for 25 years. You can listen to the actual trailer itself. I almost didn't believe it was real until I heard it for myself about 10 minutes ago. We've got it on the website right now. Don't believe me? Go listen to it. So, from the mountains of New Mexico, here is Richard C. Hoagland.
Good evening, Art.
Hello, Richard. All right, for those who might not have heard our earlier shows in the week, a very, very quick synopsis of the situation.
Well, we've been at this, 20-some years, looking at the possibilities that the face on Mars, photographed by Viking back in 1976, represented an artifact of an ancient Martian civilization.
Yeah, you wrote the book, Mission
The Monuments of Mars, the City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah.
A few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, a bunch of guys at Disney apparently got together and said, hey, let's make a Mars picture. Spurred on in part, and their deliberations went forward by the enormous success of the Pathfinder mission and the 100+ million web hits and all that.
Yeah.
At some point, Brian De Palma got involved, and we need to find out exactly when and how. That's part of this mystery stuff. To Tom Jacobson, who was the producer of the film under Disney, under Touchstone. It was De Palma who entered the idea into the script consultations and discussions. Well, let's have them, the mission to Mars, find the face on Mars. And it was De Palma whose idea was to design and put in all these extraordinary special effects, which, by the way, I now know more about, and we'll get to some of the specifics later on without giving away the plot. And it turns out that something comes directly from the Enterprise. That's new news. Anyway, a few weeks ago, we got a heads up from some people in the industry. You know, Paul Davids is a friend of mine, and Hollis, his wife, is a senior VP now at Universal Studios.
Right.
We got a heads up that, in fact, Mission to Mars, which no one had heard anything about, was going to feature the face. So, you know, my ears prick up. Gosh, I can't imagine why. And we went digging. And one of the people that we came across...
I bet your ears grew larger than Clinton's nose.
Well, you know, think of them kind of like Spock ears. You know, they get really pointy at this stuff. So one of our efforts turned up a very good guy, a very, you know, stalwart person who believes in, you know, truth, justice in the Canadian way, because he happens to work for a major Canadian newspaper. His name is David Gianmarco.
Yes.
And David called me and said he wanted to interview me several weeks ago for a piece he was doing. He just talked to Tim Robbins and I guess a couple other stars of the film, and he wanted to know, knowing of our work, my reaction to Mission to Mars. Well, I, of course, gave it to him.
I bet you did.
And it appeared in the paper. And in the course of our discussions, he told me that he had been invited to come to the Hollywood screening along with everybody else that they all fly in for these things. And I said, oh, isn't that interesting? How would you like some background material? So I sent him a copy of, you know, the UN stuff, the NASA briefings, because NASA's been inviting us in for years to tell them, the rank and file, over and over again, what we have found. And we put these on good old home video. So I sent this whole, you know, care package of stuff to David. And it takes like almost 2 weeks for snail mail to get things to Canada, in case you are sending anything up north, folks. It finally arrived. He went to the premiere. Incidents that, according to David, are unprecedented in his 14 or 15 years of covering good old Tinseltown. So with that, Art, I guess we ought to bring on David.
All right. Let's do that. Toronto, are you there? Let's try again. David Gianmarco, I think in Toronto. Now are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. You are in Toronto?
Yes, I am.
And David, what do you write for up there?
I write for the National Post, entertainment reporter. I've been covering the entertainment beat for, I guess, about 15 years now.
Okay, so you had an opportunity, just before we get into anything else, to see the movie itself, right?
Yes.
All right, we've been debating why the director of the movie is avoiding all press and all interviews, and I've been hearing from my audience about this movie. Now, let me tell you, some of the comments I've had lead me to believe that it might be the reception the movie is getting itself. I mean, I have got... well, all right, here's one from somebody who's a theater employee and got to see it early the way you did. And he said, sitting in the theater with a bunch of friends, about 20 minutes into the movie, the hissing began. By the time the people started dying in the movie, people actually were shouting, "I'm glad you're dead." Now, it doesn't get any worse than that. Was it really that bad?
At the press screening, there were a lot of teeters and giggling and that sort of thing in certain spots in the film.
Yes.
And I've been to literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these screenings, and given that it's the press, you'll hear those types of things. So yes, there was some of that going on. But, and as I said, years of doing these things, I could count on one hand the amount of times that a director has pulled out of a film junket. I mean, you know, they've worked on these films for 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years if it's a major production, and rarely do they ever pull out. It's usually really extreme circumstances that they won't talk to the press.
Yeah, I mean, they've got tons of money at stake, $120 million at stake.
Absolutely.
Here. Serious thing. So,
absolutely.
So why do you think he disappeared?
It's a mystery. I mean, we've heard a lot of different stories. I mean, at first we heard that he was sick and had to leave, but then later on, other stories started surfacing that he was upset with the reaction to the film and took off. But they kept saying they were hearing a lot of wild stories and a lot of wild rumors why he wasn't talking. And, you know, Brian De Palma has done a number of junkets before, and if you remember, he directed Bonfire of the Vanities, which was one of the
Which was a major bomb.
Exactly, and was one of the, you know, worst films, you know, of the early 90s there.
It's the one that starred Bruce Willis, sorry.
And yet he showed up to talk at that junket.
Wow.
So I don't believe that it could be just the fact that some press people, you know, were laughing or giggling. You know, he's been in this business a long time.
All right, let's look at another aspect of this. Thank God for you, David. We kept hearing, and I kept getting faxes from people who have been saying, I saw a trailer where they said, I mean, NASA did consult very heavily in this movie, right? Even to the degree
script approval.
Script approval. All right, so we're getting these words that there's this trailer out there saying 25 years of cover-up will end. 25 years of cover-up. My God, there's no way that NASA would approve any such thing as that.
A conspiracy exposed.
No way. And so I asked the audience to send the trailers, and I got all the other trailers, but I didn't get the one that we now finally have. And by God, it says 25 years of cover-up ending. Now, how can that be?
And one other note is the face that they showed, the images of the face on Mars in the trailer is of the actual pictures from the Viking mission, not the face that appears in the movie.
This is impossible. It's impossible. I mean, it's impossible.
It's happening.
They would destroy any future possibility they would ever have of having NASA consult on a movie.
Or any other part of the government. Because remember, it's one big unhappy family. You screw with one part of the government, and the other part's going to say, heck, I'm not going to get into bed with those people. Look what they did to those guys.
Probably audit half of them. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a little overdoing it, but I mean, you're right, Richard. It's screwing with the government. No
What's even more remarkable is I have been watching, because I work a lot late at night when the phones don't ring, and I watch the Disney Channel because there's a certain, you know, into Walt Disney where they go back into the past.
Oh, yes.
Disney did a series of films with Werner von Braun and the early von Braun Peenemunde paperclip NASA scientists or Nazi scientists that were brought over in excruciating detail on missions to Mars, how to go to the moon, the creation of the huge rockets. There has been a very strong, overwhelming connection between the foundations of NASA and Walt Disney and the Disney Corporation for literally almost 50 years, which makes this even more unbelievable.
Even in the early 60s, you know, further to what Richard's talking about, Walt Disney was shut down by J. Edgar Hoover because J. Edgar Hoover didn't approve of a film, a comedy, in the early 60s that he felt the FBI agents portrayed in the film were bumbling, I should say, and asked for them to change the agents from FBI to just generic government agents.
Did they?
Yeah. And
when Mr. Hoover spoke, everybody listened.
Oh, exactly.
So this trailer then really exists. 25 years of cover-up. It shows the actual face on Mars at Cydonia.
Mm-hmm.
And this, what does this mean to you, that there are two trailers out there running, and even possibly two versions of the ending of the film? Could that be true?
I checked out the film, as I said, I saw it 2 weeks ago, and I checked it out again last night. And the print that was here in Toronto still was the exact same version I saw in L.A. So, as of last night, it was still the same print.
All right, then. Why this trailer? Do you suppose they sat in there and said, we've really had it with Hoagland, and we're going to put this trailer out, and we're going to drive him totally up a tree? It's either that, or they want a little controversy to get people into the theater, or I don't know what.
Look, I have an ego as big as anybody else, but this is much bigger than that, because David has been on the phone with NASA headquarters.
Oh.
And the reaction of the official space agency to this is also completely off the wall. It makes no sense. David?
David, you called NASA when?
I called them yesterday, and, of course, get transferred around the agency as you keep going higher and higher up.
Of course.
And finally I got someone to sort of speak to me, and I believe she was in charge of public affairs, media relations, whatever. And she said, I just asked her, about this film, what the reaction was, and she said, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to comment on the film.
What?
And I said, really? And she kind of laughed a bit. She said, no, we're not allowed to talk about the film. And I said, so you can't give me a review, thumbs up, thumbs down, kind of joking with her. And she said, a number of people here at NASA have seen the film already. She said, I can confirm that we did work on it, that we were consultants, we did have a hand in the making of the film.
Yes.
And she said, other than that, I can't talk about it. And so I said, well, are you aware of this trailer that is running about a 25-year conspiracy and cover-up, and that on March 10th, the conspiracy will be exposed?
Yes.
And there was a bit of a stunned silence, and she said, what? And I repeated it, and she said...
Did you play it for her?
Oh, I didn't play it for her, no.
You should have.
And then right away she said, is this about the face on Mars? And I said, well, yes, it is.
Amazing. How many cover-ups can there be?
Yeah, really. That's right.
And she said, oh, I wasn't aware of that. And she said, you're going to have to talk to somebody else about this. And she said, I'll get them to call you. Can I have your name and number and that sort of thing? And then never heard back from her.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet you got a real fast call, huh?
Yeah, which is also interesting is that I spoke to a colleague at the Washington Times, and she also happened to be at the junket as well and doing the interviews. And she also was trying to get a comment from NASA. One of her colleagues was trying to get NASA to speak about the film. And she said they got stonewalled as well, that they would not talk to them about the film either.
So you think NASA feels like they've just been knifed in the back? Or do you think they're just wanting to disconnect with what obviously they consider to be not a good movie? Or what's your best guess?
My best guess is they haven't evaluated the situation yet, and they're reserving any kind of comment. Because, as I said, the official at NASA wasn't even aware of these trailers running and seemed a little shocked.
Now, see, this is interesting because if we can flash back to some reality, back in '98, when finally, after enormous efforts from this audience, from the Bell audience, thousands of faxes, tens of thousands were dumped on Dan Golden's floor to get the face on Mars and Cydonia reimaged by Mars Surveyor.
Right, we got the cat box.
After the images came out, NASA very carefully said politically to the press it would have no official comment.
In my opinion, they didn't come out. It's like going down to the 1-hour photo and a lady saying, sorry, sir, your role is all
But here's the
not legible.
Here's the important political point. A NASA camera, actually it was the Malin camera on a NASA spacecraft, had taken the pictures. Never met. But people like Edwin Albee and, many others, Mike Carr, all kinds of NASA scientists freely went on talk shows and TV and Dateline and CNN and had all kinds of thoughts and opinions about what the photograph showed, even if there was, quote, no official NASA opinion. They were not told, you can't talk about those pictures. And on a movie that doesn't count, where the First Amendment, as far as I understand, still holds sway in the District of Columbia, and this does not fall under the Hatch Act, which prevents politicking on federal property. That's what Al Gore got into trouble for a couple of years ago. The employees, according to David's first-person testimony, are permitted to talk about the film or even express their own opinion. This is bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Oh, unless, boys and girls, we've been right all along. There's really something on Mars, and NASA has now got egg all over its face because somebody has pulled a real switcheroo, and Disney, which used to be in their camp absolutely 100%, 24-karat gold, has suddenly turned on NASA.
All right, on that note, gentlemen, hold on. Break here at the bottom of the hour. Oh, such intrigue. Well, that puts people in the theater, doesn't it? And I know I'll be there. Mission to Mars coming up, released tomorrow. Everywhere.
Her hair is hollow gold, lips sweet fry. Her hands are never cold. You got Betty Davis aside to turn the music on. You won't have to think twice. The pure as New York snow.
The wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to call it on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nod.
It is indeed, and you have got to hear this trailer. We've got it up there for you. Go to my website. Scroll down Richard Oatland, David Gimarco, and you'll see related information. Mission Mars trailer. Listen to that, and you'll know we're telling the truth. It's out there. Can you imagine how NASA must have reacted when they... Well... Hey, listen, one quick, almost public service announcement. A free program celebrating the 3rd anniversary of the Phoenix Lights is being held, that's right, the Phoenix Lights, they're called, is being held at the main library in Glendale, Arizona on Monday, March 13th at 7 o'clock. Peter Gersten and Richard Mosser will join Dr. Sky, heard here on Coast to Coast AM, for a 3-hour program of discussions, debate, and audio-visual presentations on the anniversary. Now, get this, folks. Believe it or not. This week and next, including Monday the 13th, the Air National Guard is conducting the same Operation Snowbird, which drops flares in the very same area as seen 3 years ago. Wouldn't surprise me, but they'll throw 6-foot dummies out as sort of a bonus. All right, once again, Richard C. Hoagland and David Giamarco in Canada, who has seen this film and has written about it. David, is Mission to Mars the space version of Waterworld?
Well, it'll depend on the box office. A lot of the critics that I've talked to, and who were at the screening as well, nobody was that terribly enthused with it. Let's just put it that way. I don't think it's going to be a bomb. I really don't. The trailers that are running make it look amazing. A lot of people have been saying that the trailers are just astounding, and so I think it'll attract a huge, huge audience.
Could it turn into a cult film?
It may. How does one define a cult film? I mean, 2001, which started out being a bomb in the eyes of the critics,
is a cult film.
But how do you define a cult? This is a film now.
Well, that's just a phrase. I mean,
no. I mean, Bob Jones called the Catholic Church a cult, so we're kind of in good company here.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean it in that sense. I meant it in a good sense. A movie that 20 years from now, people are going to be still watching religiously.
Yeah, but is Gone with the Wind a cult film?
Yes.
No.
Well, in a way it is.
It's a major classic.
Okay, fine.
Lots of people want to go see it.
Major classic, Richard, I give.
Turning the Siskel and Ebert now.
It took a generation for 2001 to become that classic. Almost, from the time it was made to 2001.
Well, when people first went to it, the critics said, "What the hell?" Mm-hmm. And people to this very day are saying, "What the hell?" But they still watch it. It's a great movie.
Well, it's now like modern art, where if you don't understand it, you're with the in crowd. Therefore, you kind of go, yes, wonderful, great depth. Look, I think this film will become a classic if for no other reason. We know there's a face on Mars. We know there's a cover-up. We know there's an alien ancient civilization with some connections. And this is the first major film dealing in the history of film with that reality. It cannot help but become a classic.
David, this other trailer in mind, do you think 2 endings have been written for this movie?
It's possible. I'm not saying it's for sure, but it's possible. I mean, it has happened before where we've seen a film 2-3 weeks before it's due for release, and based on the critical response to a screening, they will change the ending, or they will change certain portions of the film, or they will shorten it, or, that sort of thing. So it has happened where in that 3-week window before release, they can change a movie.
Could it be, with that said, that they were so concerned with the reaction to the screenings that they have changed the ending? And we won't find out till tomorrow.
You know what? What I think the critics were having a problem with in the film wasn't so much the ideas in the film. It was, I think, some of the character development was a little clunky, was a little shallow. There was, clunky dialogue. It was that sort of thing. And
well, if it moves somebody to say, "I'm glad you're dead."
Yeah, I mean, there were certain things like that. I mean, I found the story intriguing. I was intrigued by it. And by the end of the film, people were, I don't want to say on the edge of their seat, that's quite a cliche, but they were wrapped up in the ending.
Okay.
It was the process of getting to the ending that I think put off a number of critics.
Which is the same reaction to 2001.
Yeah, and a lot of times
it was slow, they said it was boring, they said there wasn't enough dialogue, there wasn't enough character development, and it all depends on what era you are. I mean, this film is making a statement about an extraordinary mystery that's lingered now for over a generation, which is non-trivial. Is the human race alone? Has someone been next door and has tinkered with us?
Of course.
And it represents the first major Hollywood reaction. 120 million is not, pocket change.
No.
And no matter what happens to this thing aesthetically, it will go down in history as history plays out. It was the first film to deal with the implications on the big screen with a mass audience of what this would mean if it's real.
Well, by the way, I really loved Waterworld anyway.
I haven't seen Waterworld yet, as a matter of fact.
You know what? Waterworld wasn't that bad. And, to set the record straight, it made money. It ended up making about $400 million around the world.
You're kidding.
Yeah, so it actually did make its money. I just interviewed Kevin Costner recently, and he said, I want to thank you. You were the only reporter that's pointed out that it actually made money.
Well, it was a wonderful movie. I still have it. I'm a collector of movies. And
But, sometimes these things don't come into their own until maybe a half a generation later when there's some perspective. And it may be, I'm going to predict that regardless of the immediate reaction to the film, this film, Face of Mars, Mission to Mars, dealing with the face, is going to become a classic simply because nothing else has touched this on this scale up until now.
Well, then maybe 20 years from now, Richard, when we call NASA and get the little gal on the phone, she'll say, NASA's proud to have been consulting.
After John McCain is elected in the Queen's House? That's a whole other evening, okay? You've not heard the last of John McCain, but that's a whole other evening.
David, let me ask David, Richard, as you have gone through this, David, what is your, your final conclusion? I mean, the 2 trailers, the 2 possible endings, the nobody's talking, no interviews from the director, NASA won't talk. I mean, what does all this probably mean?
It could mean a number of things. One, it could be that people are trying to distance themselves from the film, that they don't want to speak because there's been an advanced bad buzz from the critics. But you know what? This has happened so many times before, and directors, good or bad, will get out there and defend their film.
Of course.
And they've devoted a lot of their life to this film, 2, 3, 4 years, and they will defend it. They will talk about it if it's getting a bad reaction.
Even if it's to get a one-weekend gigantic pop.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So why would he walk away? That's just mysterious.
He won't. Usually, if for some reason, if we can't get a director to talk at a weekend when when all the press are together, they will at least set up phone interviews, or for print press, or for TV, they'll set up satellite interviews that you can do at a later date before the film opens. And in this case, none of that is available. Brian will just not talk to anybody.
The thing that strikes me about this is that normally when you play this game of conspiracy, you have a great deal of speculation and almost no facts. Here we have a lot of facts and some interesting speculation based on the facts. Fact number 1. NASA was in bed with Disney and De Palma on the making of this film. Everybody agrees. NASA's not saying, oh, we had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
They admit they had a lot to do with it.
Right.
Fact number 2, the director was Brian De Palma, whose brother, the physicist, was intimately connected with this Enterprise investigation of the real face on Mars and the mysteries of Cydonia for almost 10 years. Now, news tonight regarding that relationship, which we teased a couple nights ago. David?
Well, thank you, Richard. When I was interviewing Story Musgrave, his handler was a employee but works with NASA, and he handles he's a liaison between Hollywood and NASA when they're involved in Hollywood productions. And he said to me that Bruce De Palma was on set last June, and he was involved. He was on set in Vancouver when they were shooting, and he was there. And I said, did you know that he passed away last summer? And he didn't even know that.
Really?
Yeah, but he did confirm that he was there on set with Brian, his brother.
Now, this, of course, makes it even more interesting because we have speculated that somehow in the relationship between De Palma and his brother and Enterprise, Brian De Palma got a lot of background information on what we have really figured out about Cydonia, which then somehow will wind its way into this film. And one of the reasons I urge you to go is we're going to have a great game next week with how many Enterprise mission research points can you find buried in various aspects of this interesting, feature film. We now know, we've got eyewitness testimony that Bruce was on the set, not once, but several times. Now, I can reveal tonight that this is a major piece of information because from the conversations I had with Bruce, there was a lot of, shall we say, distance between the two brothers. Initially, when I met Bruce, obviously, the name was familiar, and I was thinking in terms of a film someday maybe made by Brian De Palma. History is incredibly ironic sometimes. And Bruce quickly disabused me of this idea, saying very flatly, he said, my brother and I do not understand, come to terms on almost anything. We do not see eye to eye. We barely even speak. But sometime between that conversation, which was years ago, and the time that Bruce died, quite suddenly, he somehow made up with his brother and was invited to be an integral part of this film. And so when I see, in terms of this trailer, some of the most remarkable things that Enterprise has done quietly and not put out there in public, I am very intrigued to know what else is in the film that people would not recognize unless they were intimately familiar with the work of the Enterprise mission.
Well, 19.5 sure pops up a lot.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Now, Richard said that to me, but I think sometimes Richard sees 19.5 in cloud formation. So it's really true, David?
Oh, yeah. I mean, do you want me to tell you where it pops up?
Yeah. I mean, don't give away the end of the movie.
Okay, well, I'll try not to. The end of the film, near the end, I'm not giving away the ending, but one of the spaceships, and he's in the capsule, and some of the other astronauts are at the face. And he gives him the liftoff time as 1950. He says, we have to take off by 1950. And it gets repeated constantly. You see, the digital clock, 1949, the countdown to 1950 is liftoff. And, knowing what Richard has told me and researched and whatnot, I mean, it seemed very ironic.
Last year, when we did the Lost Tomb special, remember I was in Seattle for a week or two working with a group called The Other Side?
Yes.
Okay, well, the folks at The Other Side, who really are creative geniuses, a whole bunch of ex-fighter jocks, and they've turned their, time and attention to creating some amazing 3D simulations. What they did is they worked on, with us, a three-dimensional simulation of going to Cydonia. And we worked out the interiors. I mean, these guys came up with some amazing things with some input from me and some science and whatever. Well, lo and behold, in one of the major scenes on the film, David, as I gleaned from the trailer this evening, that recreation that the folks at The Other Side and I did of what's inside the structures on Mars appears in Mission to Mars. And on and on and on. So what I'd like to do is to make a little pact. We will not discuss any more content of the film, but we urge everyone between now and next Tuesday, you better go out and see this. Because if you don't, by next week we're going to come back with some more surprise and discuss all the little points and relationship between the fiction and the reality and NASA's weird reaction, and Disney turning around and, giving the finger to its former best Washington friend, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to be unsurprised, you better see a film this weekend.
Yeah, and you better listen to the trailer we've got up on your website right now, too. David, Richard had a really serious brush with the Grim Reaper. He had a heart attack. I guess you know about that, right?
Yes,
I told you about that. If he had bit the dust back then, at the end of this movie, would it have said, Richard?
Well, since NASA was behind this film, I don't know. We'd have to defer to Richard on that one.
There are times when your sense of humor, Mr. Bell, exceeds only your longevity in the industry.
I will say the film, actually, at the end.
Is there really?
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, why am I not surprised?
When they're inside the face, there is a heckload of imagery, Egyptian imagery. I'm sorry, I'm giving too much away again.
I can't believe it.
Why?
Is there any way?
Why?
Well, what do you mean, why? Well, I don't know why, Richard. The face many people think of as solid. I mean, maybe not after this movie. But
not if you read The Monuments of Mars.
Uh-huh.
And just back to the 19.5, I mean, when was the last time there was a countdown for a spaceship that was at, 10 minutes to the hour?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, 1950, which spaceship is due to take off at 10 minutes to an hour? Isn't it usually always on the dot, on the hour, or the half hour?
Depending upon your launch windows, but obviously that number is iconized in terms of what we found and figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the bottom line here is we have a paper trail. We have an eminent director who somehow got in charge of this major film, Going to Mars, changed the script, inserted the whole face persona,
right,
if you believe what Tom Jacobson said in the interviews to you, David, and his brother worked with us for 10 years. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is pretty straightforward.
David, I have a question for you. As a journalist, could you follow up and find out who produced this second incredible trailer that is running, and maybe somebody would talk?
I could try. I could certainly try and find out who was behind it.
Because I mean,
I know the trailer was I think it's only been in the last 2 weeks or last week that it was actually produced.
Right.
Because one of the associates at Disney, said, I wish we had this trailer, weeks ago.
Really?
Because they, realized that this was a much better trailer. And they said, well, I mean, the trailers up until now had been building it sort of as, the space cowboys going out, conquering the Wild West of the new frontier out there in outer space. And it was patterned more after the Armageddon. This one, cuts right to the chase.
So then it seems to me that if we could get to the production company that churned the second trailer out, there's a story to be told there that might answer some of our questions.
I do believe.
Well, one of the things that David's source in Washington was going to try to do is to get close to Dan Golden, which apparently is possible, and ask him point blank what the hell is going on.
You going to pursue that, David?
Yes, definitely, and find out. I mean, she recognized as well that there's a real story here.
Have you written a story on this already? In other words, on this whole controversial aspect of the thing?
Yeah, I ran an advance piece about 2 weeks ago, and tomorrow is the next piece.
Yeah, the advance piece still hasn't arrived in the mail, David.
Oh, you've got another piece coming out tomorrow, huh?
Tomorrow, yes.
Any hints?
Any hints on
what it's going to be? What'd you say?
Since I wrote it. Yeah, it's more of what I started 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's more discussing the film, the interviews, and this sort of this enigma of what's going on behind this film. I mean, how these mixed messages that are coming out here. On the one hand, you have NASA endorsing this film, and then on the other hand, they're saying that they're behind a conspiracy and a cover-up.
Well, I think they've done this just for Richard and myself, to drive us out of our minds. Anyway, everybody should go see it. I certainly am going to. Richard, final words.
Well, obviously we're going to go see it this weekend because I want to talk about it next week, and I want to bring on some more surprise guests that I think will be appropriate, and I want to get into the content because, look, the backdrop to this film is a reality sitting on Mars tonight. And we need to take all the attention the film is going to generate and create a political, tool to get new pictures of Cydonia and resolve this mystery once and for all.
Real pictures.
Real pictures.
I'm all for it. All right, Richard, as always, thank you. David Gianmarco, thank you so very much for coming on tonight.
No problem.
And when you learn more, you be in touch, all right?
Absolutely.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Art.
Good night, everybody. And so the Mars mystery continues. The mission to Mars mystery continues.
Happy days, they seem so hard to find. I tried to reach for you, but you have closed your mind. Whatever happened to our love? I wish I understood. It used to be so nice. It used to